Council meeting of August 16th to order at 7:02. Roll call, please.
Responsible president of the council member, as well as a member of the local contract review board. Council Clark,
Here.
Council Sonoma,
Here.
Council Ryder,
Here.
Council President, Council Byer,
Here.
Council Carmelo,
Here.
Mayor Barry,
Here.
Mayor.
Great. And I missed my first direction, which was that I was calling to order the joint meeting of the Talent City Council and the local contract review board. Thank you, Lucero, for pointing that out. Okay. I don't have, is it up to me to change my agenda or does it change automatically on my screen?
Think we.
Because I'm still on the study session.
Yeah. Oh, it's up to you guys to change it, but you should have a paper copy in front of you too.
I do have a paper copy. I
And
just,
I'll
yeah.
share screen once I get rocking here.
okay, and when you share screen, I'm gonna get the language for
I don't
5.1, right?
Yes.
Okay, got it. All right. Thank you. All right, so the next item on the agenda is additions or corrections to the agenda. I just have one, and that is with council consent, I'd like to move up the appointment of the interim manager. Oh, the appointment of the interim manager, item number 9.1 and into the place of 5.2. Is there any objection? So that'll put it in right after the land use hearing, which we have to do first. And then that way, the consultant, the HR consultant would be free to go at that point. Is there any objection to that? All right, with that, we'll go ahead and move it to 5.2. Did you want to add to this discussion? Go ahead.
Oh, no, I would like to add to new business.
Okay, 1 second.
I don't have a copy of I don't have a hard copy of the agenda.
You want, if there's one up on the table, you want to
Yeah,
grab one?
I'll pull it up on the
Oh.
screen in 1 second here.
All right. All right, so we're moving 9.1, 5.2. Counselor Byers.
Yes, to new business, I would also like to add a quick presentation of a travel organ grant that we're hoping to submit.
And that's, you want to move that to new business?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll move that and we'll put it in place of 9.1. How's that?
Sounds good.
Are you looking for council approval?
Yes.
Okay,
And I can print that one number, approval to submit LOI. Correct. For grant.
got it. Thank you. All righty, anybody else? Okay, the next item on the agenda are community announcements. Anybody from council with community announcements? No? All right, how about staff?
Yeah, we'd just love to let everyone know that we have music on the porch day on August 26th. We'll also have our Friday evening market, the Friday before. I'm sorry, I don't have the dates in front of me, so I don't want to get it wrong. And just to remind everyone to please sign up for Citizens Alert. We are in fire season, we can feel it outside, and that's the best way to get communicated in the event. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. And I just want to say that Citizens Alert is working very, very well. We got to, I personally have received alerts for Rogue River for the last few days and just makes me feel really secure to know that that system is working so well. Okay. Next item on the agenda is speakers heard on non-agenda item. Let me see if there's any speaker request forms for non-agenda real quick. All right. So at this time, I'm going to go ahead and call Craig Rodney.
Close.
That feels pretty good. All right. Please state your name and your city for the record and speak into the microphone so the recording can hear you.
Hi, my name is Craig Rodenmeyer, and I'm a new business owner here in Talent, Oregon, the mayor, councilors, city managers. And I just simply wanted to come up this evening and introduce myself to you all. My business name is Life Gate Church, and we are reopening a new church in the old Methodist church building on the corner of South First and Wagner. So I just, like I said, I just wanted to introduce myself to you all. We love Talent. My wife Debbie and I are originally from Ashland, Oregon, so we love this town and we're excited to be business owners here. So thank you for giving me the time.
Nice to meet you face to face. All right. The next item on the agenda is public hearings. 5.1 is appeal for variance file 2023-001 for setback exceptions in Oak Valley subdivision. Before I get us started, I just want to let everybody know that there are speaker request forms over on the counter there. If anybody wants to speak on this agenda item, there's still plenty of time to sign up. Just go ahead and grab one. And then when you've signed in the information, you'll turn it into our city recorder, Lucero here. All right. So if, am I gonna have to turn around? It's not gonna come up on my screen.
Your screen?
Oh, let's see here. Yes, I unbury it.
And let me know if you want help with that, Mayor.
I got it. Thank you.
Mayor, for things that you don't have, you can just refer to Kristen and she'll say out loud things like file number and opening statement.
So I don't think I have the opening statement. I have the procedures.
So, Kristen, do you have the opening statement that you could read?
No, I don't have it with me.
That's perfect.
We need the quasi judicial opening statement.
Okay. Is that something I'm gonna look up really quick for you?
Yes.
Take your time.
All right, thank you. I'm gonna let you figure that out.
You could do something else first.
Difficulties. Can we move up item 5.2 before 5.1? And Kristen's gonna run to the office and actually print a physical copy.
Okay. So is that okay? So-
That's okay, given the circumstance that we need to have that opening statement before we start.
So,
Feel,
to not, rather than wait for it.
right, you can go ahead and insert some other agenda item.
All right, so let's
Instead.
go ahead and go to 9.1, which is appointment of the interim city manager. Adrian, if you want to come forward and state your name and city for the record.
Thank you, Mayor. My name is Adrian Majeski, and I'm the HR director for the Rogue Valley Council of Governments. Thank you for moving that on the agenda. Although I wouldn't mind spending the evening, so thank you. I just wanted to say good evening to council and mayor and city manager and attorney. And just wanted to know, is this still the appropriate time to recommend a motion? Can I do that during? Because I'm hoping to recommend.
Yes,
or-
yep,
okay.
yep. Once we get through the your process.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. All right, thank you.
And once the council has had an opportunity to ask any questions they want to ask.
Correct.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure since we moved it to the public hearing time. it's still-
Just follow your plan process.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, so I wanted to thank you all for providing RV COG, the Rogue Valley Council of Governments, the opportunity to provide a recommendation tonight. We actually have our candidate here, so I did provide a Zoom link and Tom wanted to be here in person. So the Rogue Valley Council of Governments recommends that the council consider Tom Humphrey for the role of interim city manager. And we did provide the resume for council to review, and I think it was made part of the agenda packet or sent just after. So I wanted to give council a little background about Tom. And then if it's okay with council, we'll bring Tom forward for a few just structured questions that can be interactive. I think I'll need maybe 2 to 3 questions with Tom and turn it over to council if there's items that maybe we didn't touch on the council's interest in. So nationally certified by the American Institute of Certified Planners in 1993. Tom has over 30 years of professional planning and administrative experience in city and regional government. After becoming the City of Central Point's Community Development Director in January of 1998, Tom initiated a downtown revitalization program and assisted in the formation of an urban renewal agency. He managed the city's comprehensive plan review and strategic plan implementation processes, facilitated mixed-use development, assisted the Central Point School District with facility planning, and participated in local and area-wide transportation funding efforts. Tom promotes the creation of destination businesses in Southern Oregon and has personally introduced over 30 business owners and managers to John Shaldrick's Destination Business Boot Camp. Since his retirement in 2021, Tom has contracted with the City of Talent to provide limited planning consulting services.
Hi.
Good evening, Tom.
So I was hoping to lead the discussion, if that's okay with council, where I ask a few questions of Tom, and like I said, we could move on to other questions you may have. I'll put you in the hot seat, Tom.
Been there.
I was gonna say, I bet you're
Expect to be there again.
Tom, from your perspective, can you please let council know what you believe is the purpose or role of an interim city manager?
Sure, and I discussed this with a couple of you the other day. Having been in the Navy, it's kind of operating on an even keel, continuing the processes and projects that the city's engaged in under Jordan, and just providing some stability and consistency and problem solving. And I've been in that role a number of times in my career. If you look through the resume, I had a critical role at the Council of Governments in Roseburg during a period of upheaval. This is not a period of upheaval, but it is a period of time in which you want to maintain consistency and not rock the boat so much. I'd like to spend some time getting to know department heads. The direction I got yesterday was, you'd like for me to focus on your employees as well as listening to the community during the time that I'll be involved with you, and then whatever role there might be involved in helping you select a permanent manager going forward.
Thank you. Would you mind discussing your experience managing staff and keeping projects moving forward?
Yeah, and yesterday I mentioned some of the projects that I was involved in over a long period of time. When you get involved in land use planning and development, it sometimes takes years. So obviously 3 to 4 months is not going to be the same, in this case. But having been in the Navy Reserve, I was deployed for 7 months. When I operated in that arena, I was tasked with fortifying and hardening some of our positions in Kuwait, and that was a shorter period of time in which I was managing people and projects and interacting with an entirely different culture. In Central Point, most of my projects were longer term, but we did have shorter term examples. I managed 5 to 10 people there. Deployed, I managed probably closer to 9.
Thank you. And then also, if you please speak to your experience and knowledge of urban renewal, which I know.
Yeah. So I don't know all the answers. I'll start by saying that, but I rely on people who do know the answers. And I did participate in the creation of an urban renewal agency in Central Point, which took some time, and that was resulted in the downtown improvements that you see when you drive through there. I relied on the finance director and public works director to manage projects specifically. I was involved in overseeing the facade improvement program, which was a grant program that we used as part of the urban renewal agency, and I reported to council as often as we got the agency together. So I understand the general principles of urban renewal and financial management, but I do rely on on staff who are more focused and aware of the specifics. I'm a big picture guy, mostly.
Council, Mayor, I turn it over to you if you have questions for Tom, anything we didn't touch on that you're curious about?
Counselor Penamara?
Yeah, I'm, how long can you stay?
That's a question that I'll have to consult my wife about. But I'm happy to be here as long as it takes for you to get someone on a permanent basis.
And RV, we did discuss yesterday that we can put some flexibility if Tom's okay with that, if Tom's wife's okay with that. We could put some flexibility in the language for the end of the contract. And Jordan had mentioned that something that they did for during her recruitment was the previous interim, they actually entered into a second contract to help with the transition or help with training. So I did let Tom know that if we were pushed out to maybe giving an offer and someone accepting employment in December, starting January, and that's kind of far out, but being realistic, we may need to engage in a second contract or put some flexibility language in there that he would stay on board to transition if that's what council would like him to do. And if his wife is okay.
And that's what we did last time?
Yes,
You guys kept John Lagarza on for an additional month on a per hour basis to help support me.
Okay,
yeah, and we do have copies of those previous contracts, so we can refer to those and bring them forward to see if that's something that council would want to enter into.
great. Any other questions? I just have one question of Adrian, actually. If you could describe, not necessary to describe names, but if you could describe the process that has taken place over the last few days with the candidates and how we have arrived here. I just think it's good to talk about that for the record.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So it definitely was a competitive process and we thought we maybe had one candidate. And so I did speak with them. That person was interested, thinking I would love to help out the city of Talent and wanted to be of service if there was nobody else that could provide that service or that had come forward as a candidate. Then we surprisingly got a second candidate and then we got a third. And in discussing with all of them, I've kind of been in contact over the last week and asked similar questions to those candidates. And as soon as they knew that we had somebody extremely interested, they said, hey, I just wanted to be available to help. And it was a stretch for some of them that maybe started out saying, I don't know how interested I am, but I would also love to help out the city. And so they were very happy to say, hey, I think bringing forward a candidate that's really interested in engaging and providing the service. So yesterday, actually, probably 4 o'clock, I got a final call of, hey, Tom, it's, he was coming forward as our candidate alone today, but I did actually fully prepared to have 2 people, maybe even 3 here.
Great.
Of course, I'm delighted that, the last man standing. Just, I had the privilege of working with Talent during the initial stages of the fire recovery. And as a consequence, got to know a number of you more personally. And I just want to tell you that I'm humbled and flattered by your invitation. I was on a motorcycle trip when I was contacted a couple of times. And so I relied on my buddy Chris Clayton, who's the city manager in Central Point. Was involved in early mentoring him. He rose through the ranks. We remained pretty close. And I said, Chris, what do you think about this whole thing? And I read this to you humbly, but I think my intention here is just to reassure you. He says, I'll call you this weekend. However, I think you would be terrific. Interim managers need to be calming influences that steady the ship and prepare the table for the next full timer. If I needed an interim, you would be my first call. And I will help you in the way that I can. Jordan's relied on a lot of the other managers in the Valley when things have come up. We have that kind of collaboration. We enjoyed that in Central Point for 25 years in my employment with them. And I would continue to rely on others in the valley to support us going forward. So I think you can rest assured that I'll do my best job for you. And keep the ship afloat moving forward.
Thank you. I do want to just say for the record that the call for the invitation was just to let you know that there was a
Yeah.
position and to invite you to apply. Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Any other questions or comments? Right. Thank you, Adrian. So I appreciated that explanation just as a way to set the table for the recommendation that you're making tonight.
Thank you, Mayor. So council, it's the Rogue Valley Council of Governments recommendation that the council consider candidate Tom Humphrey for the role of interim city manager and recommend a motion to direct Rogue Valley Council of Governments to negotiate an interim city manager contract with Tom Humphrey for council's consideration. I would bring forward at a later date.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Any comments? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion. Councilor Perry Miller,
I move to direct Rogue Valley Council of Governments to negotiate an interim city manager contract with Tom Humphreys for city council's consideration. Second.
we have a motion and a second to. I can't get to all of the information all at once here, so 1 second while I. Do you have it on your screen? I don't have it on my screen.
I can put it in the chat.
Thank you.
No, I can't.
I have it right here. Did you read it off the agenda? Did you read it off the agenda?
I read it off of page 198 of
Okay.
the council.
So we have,
packet.
thank you. We have a motion and a second to direct Rogue Valley Council of Governments to negotiate an interim city manager contract with Tom Humphreys for the city council's consideration. Is there any further discussion, Councilor Clark?
Yeah, when I learned that we would be in need of a interim city manager, your name came to my mind. First off, because of the experience that I had working with you, reviewing permit applications in the wake of the fire, when we had the city council volunteering with all available and qualified persons in the region to try to process the massive flood of applications that were coming in. I really appreciated working with you in that time and that you were, available to help us in that critical period. And feel excited that you're gonna be with us for this time and appreciate your being available for it. Yeah.
Any other deliberation? Councilor Panamarev?
Yeah, I just also had the privilege of getting to work with Tom in regular meetings right after the fire. It was the housing task force or something like that. And it was a very stressful time, but I really appreciated the way you brought technical expertise, a lot of positive energy, and really encouraging everybody to like bring their best selves to the situation. So I'm beyond thrilled that you're going to be helping us out here.
I just have a couple comments. One is that, I want to echo what everybody said. And I think, first of all, that I really had a great interview with another candidate. And I just want to say, I appreciated his, he was a good candidate and but I also appreciate his decision, but we were lucky. Talent drew some good candidates. And I know that we've had a lot of conversations with our city manager who has expressed that it's really important to her leadership that we have a candidate that can bridge the relationships and have a really good kind leadership, supportive leadership with her team. And I believe we're getting that with you, Tom. And so we have a lot of respect for our staff, and we know that you'll echo the staff, not just from us, but importantly to us from our city manager as well. So your expertise speaks for itself, but your approach and your countenance and your leadership is really top of mind in this choice, should we select you tonight. So, yeah. All right. Any other comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We look forward to hearing back from you, Adrian. I love a good applause, but we can't do it here at the chambers. So that reminds me, as we queue up this next item, that comments and activity from the audience is this is not the place for it. So I appreciate being able to say that. And I appreciate being able to say it in the wake of an applause. That's the best positive to do that. So, all right. So with that, let's go ahead and go back to, thank you. You must have ran.
I did, but we already had it. We just needed to scroll.
You- You're amazing, Kristen. Thank you.
I
so
did
much.
run and I ran on my better than good knee now.
The old soccer player pulled it off here. All right, so with that, let's get back to the procedures, and I'm going to read the opening statement. The City of Talent Planning Commission,
City Council.
okay. Is there?
You're gonna have to
Is that-
ad-lib a
is that
little.
just yeah, all right. The City of Talent City Council has the authority to hold legislative hearings in accordance with Oregon Public Meeting Laws as described in ORS 192.610 through 192.710. Our decision on legislative issues is advisory. Our decisions are
Final.
Final.
final. Thank you. And you know what? It is totally fine with me that this is the one I have. I'll look to you for guidance, okay? Yeah, thank you. So our decision on legislative issues are final to this. Okay, and we may approve, modify, or deny. Is that right?
That's
Okay.
correct.
The city council has determined that the approval criteria that apply to the following application or issue currently before the Talent City Council are as follows. Kristen?
Talent Municipal Code 18.160, Talent Municipal Code 18.40, and 18.90.030.
Evidence and testimony in this hearing must be directed towards these criteria or other criteria in the city's zoning code, comprehensive plan, subdivision code, or other applicable land use and development related regulations that the person believes apply to the decision. Failure to raise an issue with sufficient clarity or detail to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond accordingly to the issue precludes appeal to the Oregon Land Use Board of Appeals on that issue. Is that still correct? Before the end of the hearing, any participant may request a continuance. In addition, whether or not there is a continuance, a participant may request that the record of the proceedings remain open for at least 7 days after the hearing. The city council will consider whether or not they will continue the hearing or leave the record open for a specified length of time or for new written testimony or evidence. Doing good so far?
I think so,
Okay.
yes.
Doing good. When called to speak, please come forward to the microphone, sign in and state your name and residential address for the public record. We'll just ask you for your city that you live in, not your address. Please keep your comments to the applicable criteria as identified in the city by the city staff. When called to speak, please come to the microphone and state your name, residential address for the public record. Please direct your comments so that the applicable criteria as identified by the city staff. The following time limits are allotted for public testimony. The applicant gets 15 minutes, individuals have 5 minutes. An individual representing a group will get 10 minutes. Applicant's rebuttal is 10 minutes. After listening to testimony and considering the evidence, the Talent City Council may vote to recommend approval with conditions, or denial of the application unless the matter is continued or tabled to another date-specific meeting. If you have questions or do not understand the procedure, please raise your hand to ask them now. All right. So the next item on the procedures is to read the item and file number from the agenda. So this is a hearing on variance file 2023-001 for setback exceptions in Oak Valley subdivision.
It's an appeal of the variance.
Thank you. An appeal of the variance. Has any of the commissioners, have any of the counselors spoken with the applicant or anyone about the application or proposal? So this is a question about ex parte, and I guess I would just say that I sit as an ex officio on the planning commission, so I was present during the original hearing, but I didn't participate. Any other ex parte? Okay. Staff report.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, council. The appeal before you tonight is for a variance that went before the Planning Commission on February 28th, 2023. A staff report was presented for the variance made presented before the variance was made findings for approval by staff. However, the Planning Commission did deny the variance and made findings for the denial, and both of those are in your packet. The proposed findings are from staff, and the final notice of decision that is by the Planning Commission that denied the variance. The Oak Valley Homeowners Association sent a letter of appeal on April 28th, 2023, following the adoption of the findings of facts that were done on April 25th, 2023. The variance request is also outlined in the staff report. Real briefly, the request is to allow an extension of 1 additional foot for a covered porch into the 10-foot rear yard of in the Oak Valley subdivision. The current code allows for a 4-foot porch not covered to extend into the rear yard setback. So this would include the covered porch and an additional 1 foot. As you can see in the diagrams above you and on your screen, hopefully. I just want to stop real quickly and make sure that you all understand what the variance is about. If you have any questions about that, I'm happy to answer those questions right now. We're all clear about what the variance is about. Okay. So in order to request a variance and be granted a variance, the applicant must make specific findings as outlined in the Talent Municipal Code, Chapter 18.160. Those specific findings are that there are exceptional or extraordinary circumstances or conditions that apply to the property. Generally, other than properties within the same zone or vicinity, which are from the lot sizes or shapes that were legally existing prior to the adoption of this chapter. The variance is necessary for the preservation of the property owner of the applicant, which is substantially the same as possessed by other owners of properties in the same vicinity or zone. The variance would not be detrimental to the purpose of this chapter, the objectives of this, or the objectives of city development plans, policies, or goals. And the variance requested is a minimum variance from the provisions of the standards of this chapter. Staff was of the opinion that the applicant had made those specific findings, which are listed in the proposed findings presented to the Planning Commission. And just to summarize what those that criteria that they made was the Oak Valley subdivision was designed as a mobile home park, however, was built with stick-built homes, and almost half of the Oak Valley lots are less than 75 feet deep, with a few that are even less than 75 feet. Therefore, many of the houses did not prior to the fire, nor currently do they meet the required high-density residential setbacks. The variance is necessary for the preservation of the property rights of the applicant to enjoy the coverage from sun and inclement weather while still maintaining a space for landscaping. The request is not detrimental to the purpose of this chapter or objectives and goals of the city. And the fire department was contacted and did not identify any health or safety concerns with the encroachment of the covered porch patio in the 10-foot setback. And the variance is the minimum variance allowed, with an additional, being that it's an additional 1 foot of patio to be covered in the 10-foot rear yard setback. So we also have received 2 public comments from the, one of them was for the variance, one was in favor of the variance, the other was against the variance. And I also have to apologize to the Oak Valley residents for the mix-up in the notification. We were able to fix that mix-up, however, and we actually hand-delivered many of the notices that were for the Oak Valley. So hopefully everybody has been notified of this. And if you have any questions of me, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, I know the applicant's representative, Chris Hearn, is here, and he can certainly go into details of what the appeal is concerning.
I just have one question. I'm looking for it. There's language. So you read all of the variances that need to be met.
The findings,
Yeah, but you didn't read the title of the code, and I remember that it had some language in there about all of these having to be met. Could
Yes,
you
all
find
of
that and
the-
read that?
yes, all of those need to be met.
Would you read that paragraph?
Oh, I don't, hold on. I don't know if I didn't put that in my notes, but I can,
I think I just can't
as
find it.
part of a variance, you have to meet every specific finding within title 18.160.
So just for clarification, because we're not finding, is that it on my screen?
I'll pull
Are
it
you
up.
bringing it up?
I'll bring it up.
You'd have to bring up the code.
Look at you go.
Keep going down. There, right there. The planning commission shall grant, no. Yeah, that's it. Planning commission shall not grant any variance unless all of the findings are made.
And the ones that you just read were A, B, C, D, and E, is that
Yeah.
right?
That's correct. I
And F.
summarized them somewhat, but yes, that's the criteria.
So I heard you read some of them. Did you read? I just want to make sure that everybody knows that these are all the criterias A through F that need to be met. And do I have that right, or am I?
Well, the last part,
Granting of the variance shall be in harmony. Oh, so F is,
that's for
That's just
access, that's for
instruction. Yeah,
access
yeah.
standards. So the F, the E, F and everything does not pertain to this variance. It's just A through D.
A through D. Got it. Okay, that explains it then. All right, thank you. That's it for me. Any other questions? Go ahead and proceed, Kristen. I think we're going to call the applicant forward.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, if
Yeah.
the
I'm not
applicant's
getting-
representative is available.
No other questions here? Okay, go ahead. So
Chris-
with
Chris,
that,
you
we'll
wanna-
call for the
Chris Hearn.
Chris Hearn.
There you go.
And I'm pleased to be here tonight on behalf of Oak Valley Homeowners Association. Oak Valley is a over 55 community under the Fair Housing Act. It was an odd history because many of the records were lost. The subdivision staff only has some memos, that summaries that were done from the early 90s. So apparently, there was at one time a lot road improved as a GD in the 90s and later built out in the early 2000s as stick-built homes, but under the original approvals, it was designed.
Chris, can you speak it? I'm sorry, I hate to interrupt you. Would you speak into the microphone? The audience is not able to hear. Hector, is the speaker working?
You just gotta bring it a little closer to your mouth, Chris. It's kind of like ice
Can
cream.
you hear now?
Like
Yeah.
you're a rock
All
star.
right.
Should I say my name and address again?
Yes, please.
Chris Hearn, 515 East Main Street, Ashland, Oregon, 97520. Mayor and council, I'm pleased to be here tonight on behalf of Oak Valley Homeowners Association. It's an over 55 community under the Fair Housing Act consisting of 76 lots. It was approved in the early 90s as a mobile home park and later built out in the early 2000s as a stick-built PUD or community or subdivision. Because the lots were originally configured as a mobile home park, they are not very deep. They're under 76 feet in most cases. They were obviously designed for mobile homes to be sideways to the street, so they're wider than they are deep. With the 20-foot setbacks that the homes were originally built out to, most of them had maybe adequate backyards of 10 feet or more, but with requirements under the CCNRs, they have to be set back 2-car garages about 25 feet from the street. So many of them are set back further than they were originally. And in most cases, this does not accommodate covered patios for the reasons that the community development director mentioned. The patios, the variance is requesting that patios be allowed to extend within 5 feet of 10-foot setback, those are 4.5, and that they'd be allowed to be covered with not enclosed, but simply covered, with an awning or patio cover to protect the residents from inclement weather, rain, and sun. While it's an over 55 park under the Fair Housing Act, in fact, most of the residents are in their 70s or 80s, and frankly like to enjoy their small backyards under either shade or if it's raining, to be protected from inclement weather. And that's the reason for the variance. To go over the criteria that were mentioned earlier for variance under Ashland or under City of Talent's code, and those are A through T, as the community development director said. The remaining requirements or for access requirements don't apply in this case. The first one is there are exceptional or extraordinary circumstances or conditions applying to the property for intended use that do not apply generally to other properties in the same zone or vicinity in which result from lot sizes or shapes legally existing prior to the adoption of the chapter, topography, or the circumstances over which the applicant has no control. And that's frankly just spot on here. This was approved, the staff said, as a mobile home park, later approved to be built out by the city as stick-built homes. And so the configuration and sizes of the lots don't adequately accommodate the covered patios in the back. There's just not even, especially if the 2-car garages are required under the CCNRs that were adopted by the Homeowners Association in the 1990s. So that's criterion A. Criterion B is the variance is necessary for the preservation of a property right of the applicant, which is substantially the same as possessed by owners of other properties in the same zone vicinity. And again, in most other zones or vicinities with properties that were not built out as stick-built, but approved originally as mobile home lots, they would enjoy having covered patios in the back in circumstances. And so that's something these residents in this particular subdivision would like to enjoy as well, just like others in normal lots with normal size configuration. The C or criterion, if the variance is not getting to the purposes of this chapter, the objectives of any city development plan or policy, the goals, policies, or text of the comprehensive plan, or other property in the same zone or vicinity in which these properties are located. And again, we don't see how this would be detrimental to the city's plans, policies, or municipal code provisions. Really, these are just over 55 plant community residents who are hoping to enjoy a covered porch or patio in the backyard, which they can't do now, and which many of them possessed prior to the subdivision being completely destroyed during the Alameda fire. Prior to that, many of these homes had covered patios. We've got pictures of some of them that we put in the record. However, not knowing that their homes would be destroyed or that they would someday have to prove the existence of covered patios prior to the fire, we just don't have photographic evidence, much as the city doesn't have evidence of the prior approvals in the early nineties. Those records have been lost. In the case of this subdivision, residents just didn't take pictures of the backyard patio covers before the fire, not knowing that they would ever have to prove they existed prior. But we do have two pictures that we were able to offer into the record. And we do have here tonight the Oak Valley Homeowners Association President, Jerry Howe, who will speak and address you and has lived in the subdivision for a period of time to address detailed questions about what existed prior to the fire. If you have questions in that regard. We made a presentation via Zoom, and that's what was allowed at the time for the planning commission. Some issues were raised after the record closed, and maybe some before concerning precedent that might be created in other subdivisions in town. We weren't prepared to address those at the time. First of all, of course, as the city attorney can tell you, land use decisions don't actually create precedent. Each land use application that comes before the planning commission or before the council on appeal is presented on its own merits, its own facts, its own circumstances. If the council approves this variance, it won't apply to any other subdivision. Not any other future applicant would have to come forward and demonstrate that they have the same exact situation that Oak Valley does. That probably isn't possible because they're not aware of any other stick-built subdivisions within the city that were originally proposed or configured and approved as mobile home parks and then later built out as stick-built. So I don't think there'll be a problem with any precedential value. Addressing some of the other findings made by the planning commission. First of all, concerning the criteria reflected, I mentioned that these were small lots originally. Mr. Houck and other members of the Oak Valley community did some calculations afterwards. The planning commission didn't consider the fact that 42% of the lots, which is 32 lots, are less than 75 feet deep. Of those lots, all but 2 are less than 67 feet deep. 2-car garage is required, and the lots do not allow garages on the side. So the setbacks are 25 feet. In these circumstances, they're 20. In the case of lot sizes and configurations, that means that there's an adequate room in the back for patio covers, unless there is a variance that's granted. The planning commission, they thought a solution would be to plant trees in the backyard. Our counterpoint to that is that any trees that were large enough to provide actual shade would be too big for these backyards. Most of these residents are in their 70s or 80s. For that tree to become mature, if it was planted, would take 10 to 20 years. And these residents are unlikely to own these homes or quite frankly, just to be around at the time those trees reach maturity. And of course, shade trees don't address at all rain coming down on the applicants, which is a big part of why they're beseeching the council for this variance to allow covered patios for these older people that are residents of the community. The planning commission suggested maybe cloth shade covers could be used, but then again, those would not only be unsightly, but they would be subject to deterioration by sun and wind, and then wouldn't last very long. Be expensive to keep replacing them. The commission indicated that if patio covers had been in place before the fire, applicants' arguments would be more persuasive. But in fact, many of the homes in Oak Valley did have patio covers before fire. As I mentioned, we didn't know the planning commission was the base part of the decision on that, so we didn't provide that testimony, but we will tonight when Mr. Houck has the opportunity to speak. Current city setback requirements have increased the need for variance in Oak Valley lots. For example, the post-fire replacement home at 342 Quail Circle is now set back 8 feet further than from the street than that pre-fire home to meet current city codes, further diminishing, like many of the other homes, the amount of space in the backyard to allow for patios with covers or awnings, protecting the residents from sun and weather and rain. I don't know how I'm doing.
You're good.
So, okay.
Yeah, you have 5 more minutes.
5 more minutes, okay. There was one person who had registered opposition. He indicated initially that he was concerned because a neighbor who had lived there before the fire had kept a dog in the backyard. And the dog's barking had irritated him. Quite frankly, we don't know how that's the patio cover request. If anything, the patio cover would either buffer or absorb noise from a barking dog. His other concern was that it would, I guess, it would enhance the ability for people to actually use their backyards in Oak Valley. And therefore there would be additional noise associated with gatherings in the backyard, since people would now use their backyard since it was covered with protected from rain or sun. First of all, any kind of noisy gatherings are prohibited by Oak Valley CCNRs. Oak Valley also has a clubhouse which residents can use and are encouraged to use to host any gatherings. And loud parties are not common for most of the residents. Most of these residents are beyond the stage where they're having a lot of loud, obnoxious parties in their backyards. Additionally, and closing, the planning commission looked at a couple of other examples they had, again, concerned about creating precedent. They mentioned the Clearview subdivision in Oak Ridge Road. Neither of these were originally approved as mobile home parks. Everett Way, another example raised by the commission, consists primarily of multifamily dwellings. There are 2 single-family residences. Both of them are already have covered patios. Everett Way only has 1 empty lot. Further, both Clearview and Old Bridge subdivisions allow construction of 2-story homes, which shrink the required footprint of homes built in those subdivisions, allowing for larger backyards. Oak Valley does not allow construction of 2-story homes. Again, most of these residents are elderly and therefore for single-story structures to accommodate their physical needs. That pretty much covers this request for variance. We don't believe this is a request that is asking the city to make huge concessions under these very unique circumstances. We believe all the variance criteria have been met. I'm prepared to answer any questions council has on the legal issues, and other than that, I would refer to the association president of Oak Valley Home Association, Mr. Jerry Huff.
Does anybody have questions? Counselor Clark and then Counselor Penamara.
Just want to clarify if I heard you correctly that that the CCNRs require a 2-car garage.
That's my understanding, Mr. House.
And the 2-car garage requires a 24-foot setback. And if that wasn't without a two-car garage, it's a 20-foot setback.
Without a garage at all.
Without a garage at all, it's a 20-foot setback. Okay. Doesn't matter if it's a 1-car garage or a 2-car garage. Okay. Just wanted to clarify that.
And again, the CCNRs date back to the 1990s, although the subdivision, it's got a blurred history. It looks like there were a few, maybe a couple, 3 or 4 homes built in the 90s, and then it was mostly built out in the early 2000s.
Thank you.
I have a follow-up question on that. How are CCNRs changed?
Well, there's a process by which the association can amend that with the vote of the membership. About 75% vote in favor of anyone affected. The property right is directly affected in the complete under some circumstances before I got on vote in favor.
Did you have a question, Counselor Penamara, if you raise your hand?
I did. Yeah, I was just trying to understand the, how you're proving hardship. Is it just basically based that they won't be able to have a roof over their patio in the back? That's the extent of the hardship, the lack of covering and the fact that, and you mentioned a lot of times people's age and stuff, but that's essentially the hardship that we're trying to overcome here with the variance.
Yeah, that I believe that they can't enjoy the same general rights that others can on lots of similar zoning or simply because of the, these different shape of the lots. And have the right to enjoy a covered patio as many residents would in subdivisions that hadn't been originally approved and designed as a mobile home park. This is beyond the control of anybody living there now or living in the residents. It was done by a developer who responded on. I think in understanding hardships in the context of any variance, we're not talking about some sort of ruling loose some hardship, but just the an inability to enjoy property right that owners, most homes should be able to enjoy. In this case, we're talking about generally elderly people wanting to sit on the back patio without being beaten on by the sun or rain. And having that amenity associated with their home, because these are very small backyards. There's a couple of photos in the record beside the backyards.
Thank you. Any other questions? Council Perry Miller?
The point you brought up just briefly about the lots not being able to be multi-story, is that also a CCNR issue or is that an R code issue? It's in the CCNR. Okay.
Being over 55 community, that single family or single level homes, and it's
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, let's go ahead and call, so I'm gonna go ahead and take the speaker request. Oh, I'm
You
sorry.
open up the public hearing maybe?
Oh, yeah, at this time, I'll open up the public hearing at 7:59. So we'll go ahead and thank you, Kristen. We'll go ahead and call speaker request forms up in the order that I've gotten them. Jerry Howe, please come forward. State your name and city for the record, and you have 5 minutes. Lucero, will you set the timer?
I'm Jerry Howe, 140 Valley Drive in town. I should say, I'm president of Oak Valley Homeowners Association. He took all of the notes that I had here, but I had a couple of things that I wanted to add to it. One is that if you drive around town, I think some properties, a lot of properties are much bigger than what ours are. Some are, but those that aren't, they have patio extensions sometimes on both sides of their house, going out to the fence lines, the neighboring fence. We're not asking for that. We're asking for an extension out. And this last week, on a group, we need to have some shade in the backyard. I mean, like you said, it's 55 and older, but the average age is 70 plus. It really is. And that leads to a lot of things. You've had a life, you want to retire, you want to be able to relax in your backyard. And a tree, like Mike Oxford, I said, he's planting trees. A lot of our people have taken advantage of that by the tree process. Beautiful. But it's going to take 10, 15 years to go get viable shade out of it. That was one of the arguments. Planting makers, you're getting these free trees, you'll have some shade. You're not going to have shade right now. You're not going to have that. And secondly, is the fact that they took some things like when we initially did this, we asked all of our owners who was interested in moving possible, adding a patio, or would be interested in 20. I remember the exact numbers, 20 plus, 25, 26 in the original.
Yep.
That applied. We had one person that gave a negative response out of that none. One. And that one person complaint was about noise. And it was like Chris said, it was about the dog in the backyard. Well, no matter how big the backyard and maybe the dog is going to be a noise. And we have orders, we have requirements. If we have a barking dog, we have ways to deal with that. Very easily, that's our responsibility. And to answer your question, again, our CTR thing, single story, stick built, 2 beds, 2 to 3 bedrooms, 2 bath, 2 car garage. And then trying to meet them. And this getting for that cold. And trying to meet the requirements, a lot of them rebuilt on the existing footprint. So that was fine. They had the garage out in front, unlike what you want to have. But they were allowed because of the previous process there. So when somebody's had to be moved back, there's not a lot of room. Sometimes this is a huge backyard, at least this here in Wall. That's a huge backyard. And these places. 0.11 is probably the average property size. You have some at 0.19, a couple of 1.14 an acre. That's not very big. And you're gonna put a 3-bedroom house in that, and it's gotta be, they're trying to squeeze, some houses trying to squeeze 1,500 square feet on that. Well, that's hard to do. It still has this protection. So that's important that they have this ability to have some protection in the backyard. So the planning commission really wrote that one negative response hard on denying. And I think there's 25, 26 positives supporting it. Where's some of that input in there into decision making? So, and to me, the key is variance means variance. It gives you the ability to make an exception. It gives you the ability to take a variance to the rule of the regulation and make an adjustment on it. Like Chris said, it doesn't necessarily become law everywhere. It's the situation and the circumstance. But they didn't go around and talk to very many people in that area. It's get information. I was told the whole time he said he was around talking to people. He didn't come to my door and ask me questions about being there. But it's important, mainly is that, this was the trailer park, and how small a mobile homes are tiny, and trying to build this home there. But if you had a chance to drive through there, how many would go through there when they asked prior to the fire? If you drive through there now, you see a huge difference. Homes are bigger, they're taller, but they also want to have this right to be. Hey, this last week was proof. We need some shape. We need to have the ability to have that shape. So we really appreciate. We came back and we felt like what we were requesting wasn't out of the ordinary. What we requested wasn't really unruly, but it was a thing to help us, help our people. And then if you want the fun and people they want to resell a little patio in the backyard, you're going to add a little cuteness to it. It's going to add protection to it. They're going to say, oh, I don't have it. So I hope you really consider that and take that into consideration and realize that well over the majority of those people that support this. We have one negative person. So you're always going to have one. You're going to have one. We have streams everywhere. I used to feed. There's a stream coach, and the stream test. You threw out the low, you threw out the high, and you took the rest. So please take that into consideration.
Thank you, Jerry. Good to see you. The next speaker request form is for Marcy Champion. Please come forward, state your name and your city for the record. And Lucero, if you will, I'm sorry.
Yeah, this is for the next one.
This is for the next
so-
item. My apologies. I saw a 5 in there and I got all crazy. My apologies. I'll call you again. So are there any other speaker request forms on this item? All right, so with that, then is applicant rebuttal.
Nobody spoke of opposing.
What's that?
There was no opposing.
Yeah, so no rebuttal. Okay. So then at this time, I'll close the public hearing. So the public hearing is closed. And boy, it's been a while since I've done one of these. I usually think I can just sail right through it after 40 years on the planning commission. So the last instruction is after listening to the testimony and considering the evidence, the city council may vote to recommend approval with conditions or denial unless the matter is continued to a date specific. All right, so this is the time when members of the council can discuss the application or the appeal. Councilor Byers?
Is now the time to ask some clarifying questions?
Yes.
Okay.
I will say, though, that I am sensitive to what the difference between clarifying questions and discussion and deliberation. So I'll just remind the council of that. Okay, Councilor Byers?
I'm open to your guidance if I should save these questions for a different part of the conversation. I am curious, does code allow for covered porches on the front of houses in this community?
They do have porches on the front.
And how deep are they?
Pardon me?
How deep are they allowed to be?
They have to be at 20 feet. They have to have a 20-foot setback in the front.
Not the setback. How deep are the?
Oh, I
porches
don't
allowed to
know. It depends on it depends on the design of the house. Many of them do not have covered porches. There are a few that do.
be? On the front, you mean?
Yes, yeah. but
Okay.
Many of them do not.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
That was my question.
Any other questions or comments? Counselor Perry Miller?
I think I'm just confused about where this 5 feet number came from. Because it seems like two things. It seems like there's a covering issue, and then there's also a issue of wanting to have a 5-foot patio when only a 4-foot patio is in our code. So, I mean, could you shed a little light on
Yes.
where these numbers
Yes.
came from?
So a 5-foot patio, covered patio is much more usable than the 4-foot. It makes it, you could put a couple of chairs and a table out there as opposed to just a 4-foot. And so they asked for it. And they, actually, this came up because somebody was already building a 5-foot patio, covered patio into the setback that we asked them to wait until a variance went through the process of a variance if it was going to be approved. However, it went ahead and was built anyway. So that is an existing non-conforming structure as it is now through that. He did it at his own risk, but that did happen. And but that was just that's just a standard usable additional foot. 4 feet is required uncovered, 5 foot allows for more usable space and have it covered.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Counselor Perry Miller?
So there's at least one patio that was built already and with also a cover.
Mhm.
If he had done a 6-foot patio, would that be what the recommendation was?
No, they would, that was just, they couldn't have gone any further just
Oh,
because of the setback, the 10-foot setback. They did not want to increase that setback at all.
Okay. And
I mean, yes, they could have asked for a 10-foot patio.
And
cover.
is it just one property that has that?
I
already?
believe there are some that were already pre-existing that they went ahead and built out as they were built like for like. There are some that because they were built in that same footprint, they were allowed to build in that same footprint.
I guess, oh, sorry.
But that's only, they don't necessarily have covered, they just don't have that 10-foot setback on the rear.
What does that mean?
That the house actually is closer than the 10-foot setback.
The house is closer to the lot line.
To
What's
the rear
setback?
lot line, yeah.
The house is less than 10 feet.
Yes, there are a couple of homes out there that did not, because they were built in the same footprint, they did not meet the 10-foot setback prior to all of this.
And the house wasn't bigger, or when you say it was built in the same footprint, it's literally had the same foundation line as prior?
That's, yeah, we allowed it to be in the same footprint if you were already at that setback.
Okay,
So the house is probably 6 feet and then you have an overhang of 2 feet.
but they didn't have to go, we didn't set them back further in the
No,
front lot line.
We were
because of the two
asking that they
garage
made the front setbacks at 20 and 24 as opposed.
And that's why they're closer to the backs, the back. So
because they were already pre-existing at that.
so we sacrificed the required 10-foot setback
Mhm.
because their CCNRs required them to have a 2-car garage. Do I understand that correctly?
That's a part of it, yes. Yeah, and so, and as Mr. Houck said, a lot of them did build a little bit larger as well. So if they could scoot it out a little bit further in the front yard than they did.
So
Or
are we
other side
saying
yards.
the city approved larger builds, which is not like for like, closer to the setback?
We didn't allow them to go into the setbacks. They could just go larger. So if they could expand out in front, then they were able to do that.
Without sacrificing any setback in
That's
the back.
correct.
Okay, I understand now. Thanks.
Yes.
Council Byers?
Of course, there's a purpose to having the
The
code,
setback.
not just the setback, but also the specific distance between a covered patio or a patio in general and the setback. And I'm wondering if you could enlighten me on the purpose why that part of the code exists.
So for most setbacks, it's really about for private, allowing some privacy and for fire. That's always been my understanding of setbacks. And that's why, when we received the request, that we went to the fire district and asked if there would be any issue with extending covered patio, meaning the roof line would go into that 5-foot setback. So that's generally what the reasoning is for those setbacks and why we maintain them. But the fire department did not have any issues with extending a covered patio into the 10-foot setback for a rear yard.
May I ask a follow-up? Did they say why they didn't have an issue?
No, they just said there's no issue here. We don't have any issue with, what they didn't expand it.
Thank you.
Counselor Penamara?
Did the fire department, do they have a standard report that they provide in these
I have
kinds of
an email.
situations?
I have an email from them.
That says no problem.
Yes.
Okay, but none of the analysis because this.
They,
and
no,
this-
there was
this
no analysis
Doesn't
done.
mean that or the
No,
other
no,
thing.
they did not go out and do any
Okay.
analysis that I'm aware of,
Okay,
but they are very well of the Oak Valley subdivision, so.
And I can provide a little more context to that, Counselor Penamara, because we actually refer to the fire department a lot. So what we do is we email to them our concern if there's something. They come out and check it out and they send an email back of, yeah, this is a fire safety, here's how we see it being corrected, or no, it's not. Just so council knows that process is for code enforcement as well. We often do it.
We send all of our applications, all planning applications go to fire as an agency, as a commenting agency, and their comments were no comment.
and they don't comment, it sounds like, unless
They
find that
they did. The
Uh,
Captain Mead did comment and said there were no
Okay.
issues with this setback, with extending into the setback.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Counselor Penamara?
Just remind me, there, as far as the public input. You notified all the residents and there was one negative response. And how many positive responses?
That was back in the planning, at the planning commission. I can't remember how many we got. And I don't know if we actually received all of the. I'll have to look through.
I just want to point out that holding the residents is not criteria.
Okay,
For a variance.
I just thought there was like
And
one.
I do hope that we can kind of keep our questions and comments. to the
Yeah,
criteria.
we had a number of in favor. Because Oak Valley residents were requesting this variance and they signed a document saying they were on board requesting this.
But as far as this hearing goes,
Not for this hearing. We got two public comments, one in favor and one against.
that's what I was trying to remember.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So any more questions or comments? And I'll ask for a motion here shortly if there's no more discussion. Council Clark?
Yeah, just trying to understand, this strikes me as unusual, I could be wrong, but to have a request for a variance for such a large number of properties. I guess it challenges my personal concept of what a variance is intended for. I mean, it's is it a special case if it applies to more than 20 people? Then it's just kind of the general landscape setting of the development in that area. Is it? I guess my question is it common to have have a single variance that would affect this many properties?
This is not necessarily common, but given the circumstances of this subdivision and how it was originally developed, it would make sense to apply it to the subdivision. It's its kind of its own circumstance. So it would apply. Not everybody in the subdivision wants to put a 5-foot covered patio on their patio, nor are they probably going to, but there are some that have, we're actually holding plans right now because somebody has proposed that, so that'll be the second person that does that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
So yes, it is somewhat unusual, but it is not, given this circumstance, I don't think it would make sense just to go through multiple variances for each lot, but we certainly could require them to.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? All right, then I'll entertain a motion. Council Clark,
Yeah, I move to uphold the planning commission denial of the variance 2023-001 and the appeal 2023-001 based on the planning commission's final order.
Second.
we have a motion and a second to uphold the planning commission's denial of variance 2023-001 and appeal 2023-001 based on the planning commission's final order. Is there any further discussion? I just have two comments. One, I agree with the planning commission's findings. And a couple of comments that I think were important to this discussion was that variances are just an opportunity for us to would you like me to?
Oh, no.
Yeah.
No, sorry.
Variances are an opportunity for us to waive on our code and choose other routes to go. And while I think that there is a very small amount of truth to that, variances as a seasoned planning commissioner, variances are really designed for really exceptional purposes. And there are other routes in these different circumstances that can be taken. The CC&Rs are in the control of the residents, and then also there are opportunities, I think, for us to look at our codes in problem solving in different ways as well. So I just wanted to, that comment stood out to me, and variances are not whimsical, and it's just not, the codes are for a purpose, and it's just not in our, in our ability to just make changes over what can be handled in other ways. And I also see hardships differently, that hardships are really items in building and construction that cannot be handled in any other way. So I feel differently about variances than what was presented tonight. I just wanted to point that out. Councilor Byers?
Yes, I do think that I understand the desire for both to spend time outside and as we've discussed in age-friendly discussions, we know that that is wonderful for people of all ages. And I am also aware of the impact of heat, especially on people over a certain age and in general. But I also am hearing that there is possibility to build covered outdoor space without requiring a variance for these homes. And so I am holding that in my mind as I'm making my decision.
I also just want to add that, that I thought that the findings from the planning commission were spot on. Is there any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilor Clark,
Yes.
Councilor Panoma,
Yes.
Councilor Greider. Councilor Byers,
Yes.
Councilor Paramilla,
Yes.
motion carries.
All right, before everybody leaves, I intend to bring up on other tonight, a discussion about implementing the code. I think that there is discussion to be had about this code as I'd like to present tonight. It may or may not be the council's wish to ask the planning commission to consider changes to this code, but I'm gonna present that tonight when we get to that agenda item that allows me to do that. I would ask that we put this on new business. And so that if somebody does want to wait around for that discussion, they don't have to wait till the final item, which, you know, I mean, it's going to be a long night otherwise. So I would ask the council to consider relaxing the rules and allowing me to place that discussion as 9.5. Is there any objection to that?
No. No objection. I mean, we put it earlier.
I'd like to put it earlier, just because we have a lot of people waiting on it. So are you okay with 9.1 and moving Travel Oregon down?
Yep. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, everybody. The next item on the agenda is the joint public hearing. Do I have it right? Yes, the joint public hearing regarding the resolution 2023-0766-R amending public contracting rules, spending authority for the city manager, for the city of Talent. Staff report.
Great, thank you, Mayor. I know we have folks waiting, so I'll go through this fairly quickly since you all are more aware of procurement stuff. You all as city council are also our local contract review board. And so that's why it's a joint public hearing tonight, because technically we need both the contract board as well as you all as council to adopt procurement rules for the city. So tonight we're going to hold a joint hearing about our procurement rules, and then we're going to shift to actually considering a resolution to adopt updated procurement rules. So with that, I will jump into a comprehensive staff report for both topics and try to move here quickly for you guys. So state statute sets the rules for public contracting, and they adopt what's called the Attorney General's model rules. And public entities are required to use these rules, or they have the option to adapt them to specific needs. We always work with local law government group for them to make recommendations of how we can adapt procurement rules to our specific needs. And so, sorry, I already skipped one of my. So tonight, what the public hearing is really about is those specific exceptions we're making to the state's model rules. And so the specific exceptions that we're making, there's only a couple in a very large packet of rules, is it allows for competitive proposals, not just competitive bids for public improvement contracts over 100,000. Just to remind you all, a bid is when we take whoever submits the lowest bid is who we have to take. Whereas proposal, we can look at more of a bigger picture of services. We're also looking to deviate from the rules by establishing special solicitation methods in very specific circumstances. And those are listed both in your packet and as well as in the slide in front of you. But it's things of changing what process we need to use for competitive procurement for very specific things like office supplies or hazardous fuels removal. Why we're looking to deviate from the attorney's rules is because for the findings, deviating will not encourage favoritism or diminish competition. It can result in substantial cost savings for the city, and it's really in the public interest to ensure a smooth continuance of city operations. And so the public hearing is really about those specific exceptions. But I'm just going to jump into some other parts of the resolution for you all to be aware of post-hearing. Yeah, Councilor
Can I
Cranmer.
ask that? So, and I didn't have a lot of time to read this thoroughly. But the exceptions that you described right now, it sounds like it does allow us to act in the public good in a better way. My question is, it is also comparable to how we're doing business now, or is it a departure from those two exceptions?
Nope, it's exactly the same to how we're doing it now. Okay, but because it's a deviation and we're adopting some changes, we have to adopt the whole package. So we're already practicing this, so just continuing that practice.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
And are these deviations from the recommended rules, or are we trying to comply with the recommended rules? I'm confused about that.
So the state provides a whole chunk of modeled rules. And then what we do is we adopt small changes to the rules to fit our needs. And that's allowable for state law. Almost every single municipality does it. So we're still within state requirements. We're just different from their model rules. If that makes sense.
It does. I feel, we went through such a big process and we were so counseled on why we need to follow the model rules.
Yeah.
And this happened just a few years ago.
Yeah.
And our city attorney at the time gave us this very, laid out, this is why you need to comply with the model rules and why you need to change when they change and make your adjustments accordingly. And for me, I don't feel studied enough to compare the contrasts that we're asking to make. I don't object to them. I don't.
Well, Mayor, I'm going to interrupt because I think this might help. These are what you adopted back in 2020. Everything I'm presenting on this slide, the city council adopted back when you all did your really intensive with the local law government group back in 2020. This is no change from what we have now. I'm going to go to my next slide. This is where it is technically changing. And the reason it's changing is because the state rules, the state model rules have changed.
I got that. I mean, I got
Okay.
that part because you said that in the beginning is that we have to adopt the whole package and not much has changed. Right? I mean, that's what you
Right.
said just a minute ago. But you are asking to change this piece right here. So understanding that it complies with law and all that, but it's just different than the model rules, right? Am I understanding you so far correctly?
So a better way I can say it is back in 2020, city council adopted 99% of the model rules, and they just did a 1% change. And that 1% was on the allowing for proposals as well as bids for public improvement projects and some very few specific exemptions to specific competitive processes. That was adopted in 2020. What I'm recommending to you all is keep those two 1% exemptions to the model rules. But for the rest of our rules, update all the rules to match how state law has changed since.
I had
2020.
it backwards in my mind. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. And so these are the ways now on the slide in front of you, the ways the rules have changed from the state model code since 2020. An increase in small procurement threshold, really a minor increase, and some changes around public hearing requirements. So really by adopting the 2022 procurement rules that are in your packet, you're adopting the same exact rules as in 2020, except with these two changes, which make us align with state law. And the reason I'm bringing this before you all now is really just to get all of the tools in place for the interim city manager and permanent city manager who are forthcoming, so that they can be up to it.
So without having a study session, can you just briefly explain what the benefit of these changes that you're wanting to make are? Like, why are we deviating?
Yeah. So the benefit to the changes from our 2020 is that it brings us in alignment with current state law. The reason back in 2020 why the city chose to make some minor exemptions from the model rules is because they thought it would be more cost effective, that it would help continue smoothness of city operations, and that it wouldn't actually hurt the competitive, transparent process of public contracting.
And have you found that to be true?
Yes. I will say the exemptions that we have are in categories that rarely come up. But things like office copier, we did buy a new copier this year. It was really useful that we didn't have to do a whole RFP process just to buy a new copier. We were able to just go and buy one from a state contract. So I have no concern over these rules of either hurting competition or limiting in some way the important use of taxpayer dollars. Really what this is, we're adopting the same rules we have, but we're bringing it into alignment with state law. Any other questions?
So do I need to open a public hearing?
So yes, so if we can just go through the public hearing process and then we can deliberate on the resolution. And so Mayor, you do have a script to read on this one because there is specific state requirements.
Agenda item 5.2 is a joint public hearing regarding resolution 2023-076-R, amending public contract rules and spending authority for the city of Talent. Before I do, I have one more question. What spending authority are we amending?
I'll show, that was on my next slide. Let's get through the public hearing and then I'll explain that before you look at the resolution.
As part of the public hearing?
The spending authority is not pursuant to the public hearing.
Okay. So this is a joint public hearing for the City of Talent Council and the Local Contract Review Board. The purpose of this hearing is to take comments on the city's draft findings, supporting the exception for certain classes of special procurements and public improvements contracts from competitive bidding requirements. At the close of this hearing, the City Council and Local Contract Review Board will consider adoption of the joint resolution amending the public contracting rules for the City of Talent. Staff report?
Yeah. So staff report, I did just give you all, so I would love to recommend opening up the public hearing.
So at this time, we'll open up the public hearing at, I can't see the time here, 8:34. Are there any speaker request forms on this item? I don't have any, so, all right, seeing none, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing.
Thank you. And so you know, the resolution before you all to consider adopts the updated 2022 procurement rules, which once again are aligned with the same ones adopted in 2020 with updates in alignment with state law. But it also adopts, where's my next screen? Some changes to the spending authority. So spending authority is how much city staff are able to sign off on invoices. So for example, right now, my spending authority is 25,000. I can sign off on any invoice that's 25,000 or less. If it's more, I have to bring it to city council. For example, our police chief, she currently has, I believe it's a 2,000 spending authority. And so what I'm proposing to you all is to up those spending authorities, make it a more in line with costs of current goods. In addition to, and I'm sorry, I'm going to pull it up. I'm also recommending that we adopt credit card limits. Currently, there is no policy in the city for what a credit card limit can be. And so just to kind of put it in paper and so that we have some written policy. And I'm going to try and find.
You have a table in here somewhere with those spending limits. It seems like you're not increasing them very much.
Not very much, but enough to deal with more day-to-day operations. And this was made in consultation with Tessa. And I will find, let me just get the page number real quick and I can get you the exact numbers. They're warning it's going to be a lot of scrolling for a second. But in the meantime, while I'm scrolling, I'm happy to answer any questions about this resolution.
Credit card limits, wouldn't they be the same as the spending limit? Or are they less?
It would be
I mean, it would not be able to exceed a spending limit, right?
So technically it could, for example, if we had someone with a spending limit of $500. It's a single purchase of $500. So if they did 2 purchases in a month that added up to 1,000, it could go up to 1,000. You know, per policy, it's best not to use credit cards. It's best to use.
Page 151, if you want to
Thank
just.
you.
look at the top.
Don't worry, guys, I was only halfway there.
I really was admiring how you could talk and scroll at the same time.
So before you all is the recommended purchasing limits and credit card limits. Yes, credit card limits in most cases tend to be less than purchasing authority. You know, it's best practice whenever you're making a large purchase to do it via an invoice process rather than a credit card process.
Yeah. I actually thought these were the most of the same. I just saw this. So see where it says you are screen sharing, stop share?
Yeah.
What is above that? What is under that?
Oh,
Scroll
lost
down a
it.
little bit.
What does it say under that?
It's just the categories.
Oh, purchasing limit, credit card limit, got it, okay.
So this resolution would adopt these recommended limits for both purchasing and credit cards.
Just because it begs the question. I'm really not concerned about it, but why is IT director the only director that has a greater authority under with a credit card?
Yeah, that's because the cost of IT infrastructure and the way most IT infrastructure is bought is through credit purchases.
Sorry, are there any more questions? I'll entertain a motion. Counselor Byers,
I move to adopt resolution 2023-076R on behalf of the City of Talent and on behalf of the city's local contract review board.
Second.
there's a motion and a second to adopt resolution 2023-076R on behalf of the City of Talent and on behalf of the city's local contract review board. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. Is this a roll call?
Yes, please.
Yeah, roll call, please.
Councilor Clark,
Yes.
Councilor Panama. Yes. Councilor Greider,
Yes.
Councilor Byers,
Yes.
Councilor Bar Miller,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is item 5.3. It's the second public hearing for community development block grant for emergency food access staff report.
Great, thank you. And per CDBG requirements, I am going to read a notice out loud to you all. So sit back and relax. The City of Talent is completing a COVID-19 food bank project funded with community development block grant funds from the Oregon Business Development Department. The location of the project is Talent, Oregon. It is estimated that the project has benefited at least 9,000 people per month, of whom 100% are low or moderate income. A public hearing will be held by the City Council at 6:45 p.m. on Wednesday, August 16th at 206 East Main Street, Talent, Oregon 97540. The purpose of the hearing is for the City Council to obtain citizens' views about the project, to take comments about the local government's performance. Written comments are also welcome and must be received by 2 p.m. on Wednesday, August 16th at 110 East Main Street, Talent, Oregon 97540, or by email to publictestimony@cityoftalent.org. Both oral and written comments will be reviewed by the City Council. The location of the hearing is accessible to the disabled. Please contact Hector Flores at 541-535-1566-1012 to know and let us know if you need any special accommodations to attend or participate in the hearing. More information about the Oregon Community Development Block Grant Program and the project is available for public review at 110 East Main Street, Talent, Oregon 97540 during regular office hours. Advance notice is requested. Y también tenemos esta noticia en español. Aquí tengo un papel si quieres por referencia. Gracias. And with that, I'll turn it to you, Mayor, to open the public hearing.
So at this time, we'll open the public hearing at 8:41. I have one speaker request form. Marcy Champion, please come forward. This time we will. State your name and city for the record.
My name is Martha Champion, and I'm from Jacksonville, and I'm actually the pre-program instructor at Access. And I just wanted to come and thank you all so much for helping us get this grant. Thanks to Jordan for all of her work on it and everybody that she works with. $250,000, we bought a lot of good things that aren't always the things that people want to fund. Like half of the building, our inventory control, or everything, inventory software. Very exciting new mini mobile pantry that we got, and this had to be done through a governmental agency or a governmental entity, and that's y'all. And so I just came tonight to kind of gratitude that you went to back us on this one. And that we're using those every day, and we're using them in your community and other communities. We love our partnership with Talent. We have a food pantry that operates here with me in this very space. And so just thank y'all for what you do and for helping us with this.
I just want to say it's us who owe you the gratitude. You guys do an amazing job. I'm here every Thursday when they do those pantries. They are a gift to our community. Truly needed.
It's a great.
Yeah.
Mutual admiration.
Mutual admiration. Good enough.
Thank you.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. Thanks, Marcy. Any other speakers on this item? Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing at 8:43. All right, are there any other comments or questions? Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
No motion required, Mayor. We just have to.
Oh,
hold
no
the public
motion?
hearing.
Just plugging along here without even looking at my papers. All right. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on then to the city report. City manager report.
Yes, so my report was included in the packet, and I'm happy to answer any questions council may have.
No questions, sign of a good report.
So you're going on vacation for a week?
I am. It's part of the leadership cohort that I'm part of.
Oh, great.
It's a 5-day intensive. So it was bad timing for everything.
Well, no, I think it's really good. Because so like you're here for the next week and then you throw the interim to the Sharks for a week and then you come back and you say, any questions?
That is my hope for plan. Yes.
All right. With that, then we'll move on to the urban renewal activities report.
Yeah, the report's in the packet, but I do want to emphasize for folks, the board did decide to move their meetings to occurring the hour before the third Wednesday city council meeting. This is to help both board member schedules as well as the interim city manager and potentially permanent city managers schedule as well.
Great. Any other questions or comments? I did notice that the grant was on the was that on the staff report?
Yes, we have had so far 6 businesses take advantage of the revitalization grant. That's a $15,000 facade grant. And we have received 1 application since that meeting. So another will come before the board.
And we don't have another tour meeting before you go, is that right?
No.
So if we, okay.
But what we have we're putting together a draft agenda to recommend to the interim city manager.
Okay, great.
Mayor,
Yep, Councilor Perry Miller.
can I ask, is it Bonnie Morgan?
Yes.
Okay, good, because I had talked to her and she had some confusion about where her application ended up, so I'm relieved to hear
We
that.
found it.
Oh, that's perfect.
Yes.
Wonderful. Thanks, Jordan.
Okay, so the next item is the consent calendar. Is there anything on the consent calendar that the council wants to bring out for discussion?
I don't want to pull anything out. I just want to make a comment.
Councilor Roberts.
Yeah, I just want to say, we have Together for Talent has 2 really wonderful candidates that are joining us. Hector Zaragoza and David Spinney. David Spinney is a long-time environmental activist and is also a web developer, so that brings that talent. Hector has used to live in Talent, now lives in Ashland. He is working on his master's in social work and is really passionate about mental health and also outreach to community and our Latinx community. And just two awesome human beings that are bring us up to the magic number of 4. But we can go to 11. So if anybody out there is interested, please apply.
Outstanding. Yeah, this is a pretty exciting consent calendar, 7.4, authorizing the city manager to execute the grant for the Community Renewable Energy Program. Also, the approval letter for approval letter of support for H+ in their affordable housing development. Yeah, and it looks like beer and wine at El Rey del Taco.
Nice.
All right, so I'll entertain a motion. Councilor Penamara.
I move to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent calendar. There any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 8, unfinished business. There is none. Item number 9 is new business. 9.1 is a really quick discussion on the code. I want to ask the council to consider directing the planning commission to revisit the codes and setbacks on porches and porches and patios, covered patios, both. We have spent the last few years, my thinking is we've spent the last few years amending our codes for greater densities, smaller lots, cottage clusters. We've added housing types that we didn't have before. And some we're finding, I think, as we go along, that some of the other codes that were kind of typical of the former codes just don't fit anymore. And to me, this is one. And it's Kristen, am I wrong that ADUs have a 5-foot setback? ADU from the back lot. They have a 10 and they have a 5 for the side. Yeah, okay. Well, that was going to be my big, reasoning, but look, here's what I do want to say is I don't think this is reason enough because all I'm asking is that we direct the planning commission to explore revisiting this. But when for the record, I sold my project on 315, but I want to refer to that. When I went to planning with a project for cottage cluster housing in order to be part of the higher density affordable housing solution, the thing that almost drove me to reduce the number of dwellings on that property was porches. And so the fact that you have a 10-foot setback in the front and a 20-foot, in the back, and it's 20-foot setback in the front, but the porch, if you want a porch, that 10-foot is from the edge of the porch and that 20-foot is from the edge of, from the patio, and the 20-foot is from the edge of the porch. It just makes no sense when you're standing over a design trying to figure this out under the conditions that we have worked on in the last couple of years. One more comment I want to make about that, and that is the other thing is that there is ample proof that now more than ever we need shade for everybody, not just Oak Valley, but everybody. The days are getting hotter, there are more of them, and we've got to look at how that's impacting our community. And I trust that the planning commission will provide us good recommendations. I'm hoping that they will anyway, but I definitely I know that at one point in time when I was talking over the plans that I was looking at, I learned something very important, that the codes are not the way they are in Talent in other communities where the porches aren't counted into the setbacks or there's a measurement that you're allowed to put your porch in the so I think we could look around and see what's going on in other communities, but I think global warming is reason enough for us to look at, are we providing enough for shade? I'm going to go to Councilor Byers, then I'll go to Councilor Penamara. Counselor Byers?
I think this is completely in line with the city's philosophy of creating a climate friendly community. This is a resilient. So one way we can make our community more resilient in the face of larger fluctuations in climate, which we all are very aware of.
Yeah. Counselor Penamara?
Yes, that and also I think it aligns with our goals regarding affordable housing because the setback could get in the way of maybe creating a duplex rather than a single family home. And Mayor, I just want to say, I think you really nailed it. I was, you know, the crux of the issue, I was kind of torn because on the one hand, you know, this didn't seem to meet the requirements of a variance. On the other hand, it's like, what is the, you know, the whole setback thing didn't, you know, I'm wondering what kind of aesthetic or what we're trying to protect with that, and whether that in today with our values and where we're moving as a world, that makes sense. And so I think a really great task for the planning commission to take up. And I'll give you a motion if you want.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask a couple questions first. Kristen, do you feel like asking the planning commission to do this work is the direction to go in? If we ask them to prioritize this work?
They can prioritize.
And does your department have the capacity for this?
I like that.
The other question I have is, it would seem wrong for us to not to acknowledge that an important neighborhood to us is caught in a crunch on this, and to be punitive as we work on this. Is there, Dave, is there anything that we need to do to make sure that the folks in Oak Valley aren't, that we can put them in some kind of limbo state while we try to work this out and allow them to use this code when the opportunity, is that even necessary? Like, I want to make sure that you know, we talked about a resident that's already built this, even though they were advised against it, which is a little hard to hear. But there are probably other residents that want to consider this or may be partly into it. I just want to make sure that we can put everything on hold and get this done, and then let everybody benefit from whatever changes are made. Is that even necessary? I just want to make sure we don't overlook that if we should.
I'm not sure how long. I'm not sure how we'll do that when we don't have that in our code currently. That we could allow somebody to go against the code. And I'm not sure that there's any kind of exception. I'll have to look and see. That was the reason for the variance, is to go through that process, and then we'd have to really quickly redo it. That's not, because as I mentioned, we do have one plan that is sitting waiting for this variance, so we're not.
But we'll also let them know that we're asking the planning commission to explore a change to that code. Yeah, and then that is if the council agrees with it.
The planning commission can come with that, we could probably come with some language to present to them to move forward with it. I'm not sure how fast that they. This staff and the language to move forward with changes.
Well,
I
just don't want, I think what is good intention on our part, I'd like to think it's good intention, to, you know, blow up your workload or.
Yeah.
I recognize that smile, Kristen.
I will say,
I'm happy to do it. I'd like to help out as best I can. I will do my best to get this on the agenda. Yeah, right now it's me and a part-time mom.
Well, I just want to make it clear that I don't think this is about Oak Valley. I think this is about everybody who needs that shade. And, but at the same time, we had a fire here and, you know, there's reasons to sort of maybe try to also help Oak Valley in this process. So, if there's a way we can do that, Dave, I hope that we would.
I will look at that. I can't think of anything. I think Kristen has stated it accurately. All we can do is ask people who would like to build the porch and cover to hold off until we can get this done. It might be useful to have a motion from the council telling the planning commission that they would like to make this a priority.
That's definitely what I'm asking for. Yeah, that I will be asking for a motion as long as also we're not violating any. Yeah.
Can they do an emergency ordinance? Did not have what they're getting waiting? I don't know. I don't know. But I get the word we can do that.
I can look at that. That's that may be difficult, but we can look at that.
One of the ways that we worked around variances in Central Point, and I'm not telling you this, that we were illegal doing it, it's that when you create a planned unit development, those can have different setback requirements than a typical subdivision. And I'm not clear after having listened to this conversation, whether or not this still constitutes a PUD.
I don't think we don't allow.
We don't have them anymore.
We don't have PUDs anymore.
Yeah, we don't allow.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that, to me, that would be an immediate way to create a new set of conditions for this particular development. Otherwise, I'd be happy to, in my new role, I'd be happy to assist Kristen.
Yeah, and I appreciate that comment from, and I'm not, everybody speak up, please, but from my view, this isn't about one neighborhood and I don't want to send that message. I think this is really truly about changing conditions in our environment and us needing to, as you said so adequately. Anyway, I would rather try, what are your thoughts about us doing this as an emergency and then you having come back to us to tell us we couldn't do it?
You can do that and I can do that. So
And
that's the direction you want to go.
Yeah, in the event that we, in hopes that we were able to do it as an
Right.
emergency. So Counselor Byers?
I'm wondering if it would be both hopeful and helpful for staff in communicating. If we have this motion from the council, potential motion to share publicly that it's coming, there is a process. But, if this motion passes, hang tight. It's
Add some
coming.
outreach to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for being willing. So I would ask the council to consider a motion. And I'd ask you to consider a motion in an emergency. Counselor Namrith?
Yeah, did you want me to put an emergency clause in there?
I-
I was just gonna ask the.
I'll
planning
let the
to take a-
counselor decide what they want to do.
Okay, so here's what I was gonna suggest is, I move to, request the planning or direct the planning commission to explore, potential updates, to the city code with regard to setbacks. But it sounds like more. Oh, my time's
Your
up.
timer's up.
It's my bed.
It's 9 p.m. everyone.
Yeah, if you're asking me that question.
Yeah,
I
I'm
don't-
asking you
yeah.
that question, help me craft the motion.
I feel like we got a couple of good pieces of information tonight. One was that Kristen said one approach would be to ask staff to draft potential language to propose to planning commission. I think that might be more efficient
Okay,
than the motion that you're making.
okay.
Also, I think we're talking about a lot of different things because porch setbacks are in a different section. So if you're talking about setbacks in general, that would be completely different and go through the entire code, which I don't think we want to do. So we want to address just setbacks for porches and covered porches.
Porches and patios, right? Yeah, and covered patios.
So, and I think that's in our general provisions. That's probably what we're going to focus on. But we don't have to, the motion doesn't have to include that just for.
Write it down. Yeah, if somebody else wants to take a stab at the motion, that's fine too.
If I may say, I don't think you need to ask staff to draft the potential language that's going to happen. It's the planning commission that is a, separate entity that you need to address this to.
Okay, so we are directing the planning commission then.
Okay.
Yeah, all right,
Directing or requesting, I don't know how you want
Yeah.
to put it.
yeah. Thank you for that, actually. Okay. So, do we want to, is it an explore or,
Well, I think I'll change it to prioritize.
okay,
Okay,
great.
so direct planning commission to prioritize examining code regarding porch and covered patio setbacks. Does that work? Kristen's not.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to, can I read your paper?
Oh.
Yeah. To direct the planning commission to prioritize.
Sure, here.
Wow. To prioritize porch and patio covered patio setbacks. Updates. Did I get that? Yeah. Okay. Any further discussion? Go ahead, Councilor.
I appreciate this as a constructive measure to, address the specific issue that was brought before us tonight. But like you said, it really does apply citywide, and I think this is a really an appropriate thing to do, both practically and procedurally.
Did we want to think about whether or not this was an emergency declaring? I don't think
Couldn't it
declaring.
Doesn't that
Come
happen
back.
later, right?
Yeah.
Oh, does it
We
happen
could-
Can deal
later?
with that later.
Yeah, when
Okay,
it comes
all
back.
right,
it's
got it.
minutes, I mean,
Thank you all for keeping me straight. So if there's no further discussion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, thank you. Does that conclude this matter, Dave? Is there anything else? Okay. Thank you. And Kristen, thank you for your willingness. We couldn't do it without you. All right, so the next item on the agenda is 9.2 Travel Oregon LOI.
Yes, did we have the printed versions of those? So Travel Oregon just released their 10-year strategic plan with their fiscal year 2023, 24 and 24, 25 competitive grant program. And in reading over what this grant program is supposed to accomplish, it is supposed to support the restoration or improving access to public spaces, including existing parks. And by access, it doesn't just mean adding like ADA compliant ramps or something like that. It also means keeping facilities like that accessible to communities who might not have them otherwise. It also is really focused on equitable facilitating of spaces that are used, that are placemaking, that serve the local culture and that draw people to a certain area or region. It also is focused on supporting communities that were impacted by wildfires over the past 2 years. In reading through this, it seemed like a perfect fit to secure up to potentially 25% of the funding we need to restore or repair the skate park. And so I crafted an LOI. The grant process for this, you submit an LOI, and then if the review committee feels it is appropriate and aligned with the vision of the grant funds, they will invite us to submit an entire application. I crafted this having consulted with Robert Slayton and with the Parks Commission and with Jordan. And so, well, I have crafted this. If I guess I'm presenting it on behalf of city staff for council permission to submit this. The deadline is Friday at 5 p.m.
Yeah. Awesome. I love this. I just have one question if I may. Is there any possibility that this would change the prioritization of the project getting built?
No.
I don't believe so. In fact, it might.
Well, in chatting, in going back through both parks meetings, notes, and in chatting with Robert, this was already a top priority. And the plan had been to hopefully have acquired the funding and had the necessary steps in the process followed through to begin the work at the beginning of summer 2024 anyway. So
Terrific. Any other questions? Well, thank you so much, Councilor Byers.
you're welcome. If you flip it over, I almost used the character limit.
I'll entertain a motion. Councilor Penamarath,
I move to approve the LOI, LOI to the Travel Oregon competitive grant.
we have a motion and a second to approve the LOI to the Travel Oregon, the 2023-25 Travel Oregon competitive grant for the purpose of the skate park and bike park restoration. Any further discussion?
Just a clarifying question, we don't have to you don't need us to direct staff to do anything, that's enough of a motion, or do we? need
No,
to say
just for city
send
council.
it?
Oh, sorry. Sorry, Eleanor. Sorry, Councilor Bernard. No, for city policy, council has requested that they approve grant submissions, including LOIs. So this is just the formality to say that you guys are comfortable with us applying. Yeah.
Point of clarification. So if we are invited to apply for this grant, which I have also already offered to write the grant application as well. Do we need to bring that application back before city for approval to submit the application as well if the LOI is initiating the grant process anyway?
Yes.
Okay.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thanks again, Councilor Byers.
Thank you.
Awesome. Adoption of the timeline for the city manager recruitment is item 9.2. Staff?
Okay, I'm gonna quickly summarize some consensus that was found during the study session. I'm gonna summarize it slowly because we'll want to capture this in the minutes. City council had a discussion today about what process you all would like to use for recruiting and hiring a city manager. So the general consensus are, the city council would like to have meetings with city council and mayor to develop a candidate profile, in addition to an employee survey, a community survey, a meeting with community leaders, and a department head meeting.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
The title of this item is adoption of the timeline, so I'm not really sure what we're adding to that.
So by stating all these out loud, we're trying to meet the requirements to allow us to go into executive session for the actual interviews themselves.
And so that needs to include the specifics of the process.
The details of the
Okay,
process and how
thank you.
community input will be involved.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
City council would like to form a subcommittee, and the subcommittee would be comprised of the mayor, the council president, and the vice chair of the urban renewal board. That subcommittee will be responsible for creating the shortlist, that is for first reviewing the candidate applications and deciding who moves to a virtual interview round. That preliminary interview will be conducted by the subcommittee, who will make a recommendation of who should be in the final interview round, which will be in front of full council, and will be in person. And that the shortlist meeting is planned to take place on October 11th. The preliminary interview is planned to take place on October 24th, and the final interviews are planned to take place on November 1st. Those dates are subject to change depending on schedule necessity.
And if dates change, does it change any, do we miss the mark on our requirements?
No.
Okay.
And so I would just ask to city council if that is an accurate summarization of what consensus was at study session, to just say via motion, I approve the hiring process as stated by city manager.
Councilor Byers?
Just a quick clarifying question. Do we need to state the invitation of any, what is the term? I'm sorry, what?
Subject matter expert?
Yes, in the executive session.
No.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right, I'll entertain a motion. Counselor Byers,
I move to adopt the outline timeline for the city manager recruitment process.
Second.
we have a motion and a second to adopt the outline timeline for the city manager recruitment as stated by the city manager. Right?
Yeah, whatever the motion that was made, it was fine.
Yeah, okay. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 9.5 now is discussion of eligible projects for peer funding. Staff?
Yes, so as city council is aware, there's currently a grant opportunity called peer funding, the Planning, Infrastructure and Economic Recovery Funds that come down as CDBG grants specific to the recovery of our community from the Alameda fire. The deep intention of these funds is to support economic revitalization. The city of Talent is eligible to receive these funds, and so I wanted to discuss with you all some potential projects to see if there's a project you all want to prioritize for the submission of an application. I'm going to go to that spot in the.
Are you asking us to prioritize a project or consider all three of the projects?
I mean, you can consider all three. I think there is strength in choosing a specific one or a specific two for staff to focus on. And I'll quickly summarize them. The first round is really upgrading Wagner Street. So Wagner Street is part of our core downtown. Really, it's Main Street and Wagner Street are kind of the downtown circuit. Right now, we have a railroad crossing that is not up to safe standards. And we also have some pedestrian bike accessibility incompleteness. And so really what this proposal would be to make those upgrades to really make it a core pedestrian and walk safe area, much like we have done with our Main Street. Another idea is streetscape enhancements, and that's just really completing our sidewalk network around town to help folks access kind of our commercial core areas. A third idea, and this one is coming out of our urban renewal revitalization plan, is a Path Success grant. This is a grant that was done very successfully in Pendleton. And it's really a grant program that helps provide new businesses with startup money, typically in the form of forgivable loan. I want to emphasize this would be for things like inventory or furniture. It would not be used for construction because this CDBG funds have specific construction requirements that would be very difficult for a new business to meet. That Path Success grant, I'm proposing it because we know it's a huge need in our community, but I would be looking towards So Ready and some other groups that do business specialization, who do have expertise in the area. I'm hoping we'll fill that category, but just in case not, I wanted to put that as an option up there.
I didn't catch that last paragraph you just said.
Path Success grant, my hope is that entity with business expertise rather than the City of Talent itself will be taking the initiative on a business program to help support new businesses. But I know it's a top priority for us here in the city, so I wanted to make sure it was up there as an option in case you all are interested in the city running their own program. Yeah, of course.
I want to ask about upgrading Wagner Street and Wagner Creek Road to Talent Avenue. What strikes me, it definitely would be like an artery into the downtown area, creating better walkability along that way will bring people out of the schoolhouse area, the Second Street area. I see the value in that for sure, especially if it's ADA compliant. But I was curious with so little available land along there for commercial development, it strikes me as this might be a better project for maybe transportation funding. And then what are your thoughts about maybe doing some of this, some sort of upgrades to the areas where there is available commercial land, like out on the highway or along Talon Avenue, and creating connectivity between the two areas as a means of you know, helping the highway get more access from the downtown area. I mean, I do know the TGM stuff is coming, but I just was curious why this floated to the top of priorities rather than some of the other areas where more commercial development is more likely.
Right, so along Highway 99, we have complete sidewalks and complete bike paths. And so the need to upgrade or improve city infrastructure is, you know, less high than in the areas where we do have identified the need for infrastructure improvements for the city.
And so is infrastructure limited to sidewalks, and is the challenge the limitations of infrastructure?
So
Or
the
the
way this
redundancy
grant,
of it?
yeah, it's the redundancy. The way this grant really works is it's federal money. And so with doing anything that's construction related with federal money, there are just higher requirements that typically cause the price of things to go up. And so the desire and need to help specific commercial property owners to develop. The issue with that is that if we help support a commercial property to develop, it's not city property, it's a privately owned property. It'll increase the standards that developer needs to meet. To a point where most commercial property folks we've talked to would not be interested in participating in that. And so these came up really by talking to our public works director and city engineer, RH2, who is working on peer applications for other jurisdictions as well. And these are kind of things that he recommends that align with kind of that economic revitalization while still attaining city infrastructure goals. The first one does hit a major one that's top of the list of our capital improvement plan for our transportation system. I will say it also increases. We have two very large commercial properties on that road, our Ray's Marketplace and the post office. And the idea that one day those might become something different than what they are now, this just kind of improves paving the way for that one.
Yeah. So looking down Talon Avenue,
okay.
same thing? Like it's all adequate and it'd be just be redundant?
There are pieces of sidewalk we should fill in on Talon Avenue. I mean, I think if council wants to prioritize infrastructure, I would recommend combining the Wagner Creek improvements with the general streetscape enhancements. Streetscape enhancements, including Talon Avenue, complete sidewalks.
Any other questions? Councilor Penamarath?
Yeah, when I saw this, I was interested in, you know, the overlap with our capital improvement plan. And I was wondering about the Wagner extension project, where just to connect up with Valley View, that one. I was wondering if this is the kind of thing that could support that, and whether you considered that in the pros and cons.
Yeah, I did. You know, that if we were ready to build that road, this would be an awesome grant for that. These funds do have a timeline on expenditure. And I do consider the process that we need to go through for helping TID relocate or moving forward with getting access to build that road, coming up with the road designs and actually building it. I don't think we can do within the time frame specific to the peer grant.
Just to follow up, but it could be used for buying up the land.
It could be used for buying up the land.
Because that, you know, that could be like, but you're saying that, and I think now I'm starting to remember, but it's after 9 o'clock. That we do have to have a plan in place before we can move forward with any of that, including buying up the land.
When you say a plan in place, you mean a plan in place to build the road?
Yeah.
You know, it really depends. If TID is willing to sell, we can buy that property without a plan in place. If TID is unwilling to sell and the city wants to go through an eminent domain claim or anything like that, it would require a very clear plan of why we would need to be taking that land. You know, I've talked to TID, you know, and TID says that they're interested in moving one day if they can find a piece of land that has the right facility for them and that does not place them in any debt or needing to go out into debt with their customers. So long story short, right now, they're not looking to sell the property until they have a plan in place for where to go and how to make it happen. But once again, City Council is happy to direct any project that they want us to prioritize for peer. Or we don't need to submit an application at all either.
Or we can what?
Or we don't need to submit an application at this time. It is up to council's direction.
So there is there, if we don't submit an application at this time, will they hold funds for, if we say we are going to submit an application? Because I know that they can, I know the selection committee can spend up to 70% of the fund, if I have it right, 70% of the funds in the first round.
So the way that the application process works is there is a selection committee. And that selection committee is made up of a talent representative, Phoenix representative, county representative, So Ready, and our long-term recovery group. And so they're accepting their first set of applications this September, and then they'll review them in October. And they will decide which of those projects they want to recommend move forward to OHCS, which is the state body that will be actually reviewing the applications for eligibility and award. It is I believe the steering committee stated purpose that they want to at least hold back 30% of the funds in this first round of applications in case other applications come up down the line. But there's the also competing goal of they want to get the money out as soon as possible because they want to help our community as soon as possible.
Yeah. Councilor Perry Miller and Byers.
Oh, sorry, that's in your hand. 30% of funds they want to hold back. Is that for each category or are you just talking about municipalities?
That's total. So right now there's 13.8 million to distribute through these CDBG funds here in Jackson County.
But I guess I'm asking about the different categories because municipalities are in a category of their own for the infrastructure. Is it 30% of that category?
The committee decided not to put money in categories, but to just openly look at all applications. The priority of the committee is economic revitalization.
Okay.
So doing funds that'll help support economic recovery. And these infrastructure things were chosen with the Public Works Director with our belief that they can support economic recovery through infrastructure.
Councilor Byers?
That's a good lead into my question, which was, I'm recognizing a lot of this from our CIP plan. And I'm wondering if you pulled these because they fit the requirements specifically, even if there might also be other potential funding for any of these, and if so, which ones?
Yeah, great question. So these are CIP projects that Jeff and I believed helped address the committee's goals of economic revitalization. I want to be really clear that per CDBG requirements, any infrastructure project is valid under this premise as long as it addresses a fire recovery need. So I think a lot more infrastructure could be applied for. It just has less of an economic recovery tie. And so in this specific one, what capital improvement projects have been pulled out are going to be the railroad crossing at on Wagner Street. So right now it's a stop sign. So it'd be actually putting down the safety bars and the lights and actual crosswalk and bike path over it. The second one on our CIP is in completion of our sidewalks in certain areas. So specific to Talent Avenue, Rapp Road, and some other areas where we just have sidewalk gaps.
Councilor Clark?
Just wanted to make a motion to extend the meeting to as late as 10 o'clock as necessary.
10 o'clock.
Did you second?
Did you say 9 o'clock?
No, I said
No, I
third.
said
Oh, okay,
that.
so you're so
I thought
far
we were
away.
saying-
Second, you're so far away. Second.
We have a motion and a second to extend the meeting as far as 10 o'clock. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Council Greider?
Grants, and it's more a general question as we're talking about timelines and things like that. So it wouldn't apply to this one, but we talked about having just minimal duties and new things come up for the interim city manager. So is that something that you thought about not putting on their plate, applying for new grants, looking at new grants, things like that? This would be something that you would write and would be like maybe one of your last.
So we would have our city engineer / public works director write this. It's due, this first round is due September 1st, but there'll be a second round this winter. So if we don't find a project that we want to apply for now, we can apply again next quarter. I will say it will be a task that I'm hoping the interim city manager takes up. Looking back at you, Tom, would be to sit on the selection committee as the talent representative. So they will be very involved with peer.
So I think we have to choose that, don't we?
I think I'm per the selection committee's bylaws, I can just, the city manager is the one, and so he will technically be the city manager and can sit on it.
I thought we appointed you.
I have to look back at the way it was worded. Yeah.
I mean, I don't disagree with your suggestion. I want to make, it just seems like we appointed you. Back to this, these choices. We don't see all of the, yeah, important to note. If the City of Talent were to host a grant program, we would be the limitations of what the fund could be used for. That gave me the impression that because the city is running this grant program, the limitations would actually be higher than what the grant itself allows for. What does that mean exactly?
I meant to capture just that this grant program would be for things like inventory, furniture, anything that's not construction related.
Which would be, if no matter who's handling a grant program, those would be the conditions.
Yes, unless they wanted to provide construction grants to businesses. I'm saying it is not within the City of Talent's capacity to help support businesses meet the federal requirements for construction.
I have another question. What about infrastructure for commercial development on the gateway? Because that's a mixed use project. Was that ever discussed?
Yeah, it was, and it's a tough, and this might be a great one to talk with the interim city manager when he's in this seat for a future round of a peer grant application, because he's been involved with developing the RFP for that site. It was a tough timing thing of knowing when the Gateway Transitional Housing Program is going to be winding down. At the same time of, does the City of Talent want to develop that site ourselves with the construction or support it with the funding? If it is supported with the funding, it automatically will create federal requirements. Or do we want to do an RFP that's solely to the developer to develop the site?
Yeah, I think it'd be worth discussing that project, at least from the standpoint of incentivizing the commercial piece, because that really historically has been the piece that we struggled with the most in that. Yeah, but I don't know if that would be thwarted by the idea that thwarted by the rules that this grant requires for the environmental impacts and stuff. Like, I wonder how that would shake out in terms of balance. I do agree it's worth talking about in the
And
future.
it might be lower because we did do an environmental assessment on that site, and we did do a brownfield cleanup.
Yeah, and by the way, everybody keeps talking about that as if it's like this huge impact. I mean, it's not the end of the world to do that. That said, follow up to this question is, don't we have 10 years to spend that money? So isn't there 10 years to spend the money? So if we decided like in the early years to use it on Gateway, we have a long time to spend it, right?
You know what, I'm not gonna be able to quote grant specifics. It has been so long ago since I looked at that thing. I believe it is a 10-year period. It might be a 6-year period. But I can follow up with that answer tomorrow when I have the chance to look at the details.
Good. I thought it was 7 to apply for it, 7 to allocate it, and 10 to spend it.
I would rely on yours more closely than my memory right now.
Well, you know, that's shaky stuff right there. I think I saw your hand go up.
Can you please, I think I heard this say that you do feel like it's also possible to combine the first two options?
Yeah.
Councilor Penamara.
So, you know, in RVMPO, we talk a lot about, you know, the federal requirements, construction, making things a lot more expensive. Did the idea of fund exchange with the state come up in this context at all, or is it just not applicable?
Sorry, will you ask that one more time? I got distracted by the Zoom.
Oh,
screen.
sure. Yeah, so ODOT does, the state does a kind of a fund exchange so you trade a federal dollar for a state dollar. I'm just wondering if that's applicable to this context. It's,
Yeah, this will
This
not
shot-
be,
the long
this will
shot.
not be applicable
Long shot
to my
question.
understanding. Yeah.
So I have a follow-up. And that's, you know, if these construction projects, you know, are potentially fundable through other programs that don't have the federal requirements. It seems like of these three, only the Path to Success grant doesn't involve any construction. It's just buying stuff, right?
Mhm.
So it seems to me that would be the easy peasy one to go for. And it's kind of, I'm kind of debating and trying to grok whether you're recommending that we go for something now while there's more money, or wait to the next round when there's significantly less money and potentially more competition.
Yeah, you know, my thoughts on this, and this is just from my single perspective, is the pure grant funding that's currently available is a kind of one-time thing in a 50-year period. You know, this is never before has 13.8 million been given to Jackson County area to help support specific Alameda fire recovery. So now is really the time to try to take advantage of that rather than wait and look for other grant funds that might apply. You know, if our application doesn't get picked, then absolutely we can look for different avenues for that funding. At the same time, however, if city council wants to have more time to consider things and to talk with the next city manager about the Gateway site specifically, I think there is time to do that. You know, 13.8 million is a lot. I think we'll have a lot of applications in this first round, but not necessarily enough to cover the full extent. So I think there is opportunity, but it is just a slight risk running of a smaller pool of money available.
And we're talking about a quarter later, right? So
are.
my question earlier was not clear enough. Let me ask it again. Do you think that if we waited to have better discussion or whatever, that it would diminish our ability to capture the amount of funds that we need to do our projects? Do you think that there'll be less money to go after?
And when you say do our projects, do you mean the ones up on the screen or all projects we might want to do or just total money?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, just total money. Like, do you think that if we weren't able to just like say, yeah, go?
You know, I'm not able to answer that because it'll be entirely up to the selection committee.
I think I'm with you. It's not worth the risk. Counselor Byers?
And sorry, just 9:30, clarifying what I think I heard. We can apply for more than one grant, correct?
Yes. Yeah, we could submit multiple applications.
And the city would run the grant program?
The way we would have to write it, yes, you know, so that's the other point Council Brown made. You know, the city is well experienced at doing capital projects. I think the administrative burden of running either the Wagner Street improvements or the streetscape enhancements, you know, we have kind of been tried and true on helping capital projects go through. The Path to Success grant will require significant administration of it compared to what we do now with city staff. The one in Pendleton is so successful because it's deeply tied with the business community, where they offer classes to the people who participate. They do quarterly check-ins to make sure their businesses are going well. And that's how they've really ensured success for the businesses they've given grants to. So the recognition that when you look at what's the easy peasy one, I actually have the opposite view, that the past success grant would take more staff time.
A
Councilor
follow-up, I
Thomas, yeah.
see your point. What if, could the city partner with, for example, Talent Business Alliance or some other,
Yeah,
business
that
organization?
would be the absolute hope. It'll just take a lot of coordination. If it was the city itself running the grant program, we would just be the ones required to oversee and make sure the grant was working the way we wanted it to.
But that could be combined with, getting the expertise from, the nonprofit that's more familiar, could gather up the information.
Yes.
I guess the question is really this, could a partnership relieve the administrative burden on the city that it would become attractive?
I will say no. Okay. That, the grant reporting and the grant management is where the burden falls.
There are other items on the agenda, so I'd like to start to push us towards a decision here. Councilor Byers,
I'm ready to make a motion.
okay, any other comments before I entertain this motion? Councilor Byers?
I'm scrolling up a little.
Oh, sorry.
Helpful. Thank you. I move to direct staff to submit an application to the peer program for the combined streetscape enhancements and upgrade Wagner Street from Wagner Creek Road to Talent Avenue.
Second,
We have a motion and a second to submit an application to the peer program for the combination of the upgrade Wagner Street and Wagner Creek Road to Talon Avenue and streetscape enhancements. Any further discussion?
I would speak to my motion really quickly.
Councilor Byers?
I would also hope that we would go for this third option in the next quarter. And I do think that for that grant to be competitive, there needs to be a really clear understanding between any stakeholders and collaboration partners that might be relying on to make it a really effective program. And I think we do ourselves a disservice if we don't allow for there to be enough time between now and next quarter to actually get a better understanding of what that looks like before applying for the grant.
Any further discussion? I would just say that if the vote was split, I don't think it could be. I would not support this motion just because it doesn't include the Path to Success grant. And I do think that the one intention that I heard a great deal from the community testimony for this grant was that this would get directly into the hands, some of this money would get directly into the hands some of the impacted businesses, and I'm just not seeing a lot of program for that across the board. And this is an opportunity where we would be able to move that forward. And to the city manager's point, and I don't think she meant it specifically for this, but I'm gonna suggest that I do think that it's time sensitive. I do think that businesses are businesses trying to sustain through this crisis are having challenges, and I do have confidence that we would be able to sort out ways for this to be managed. There are several nonprofits that I think would be able to do this work and in our community. And I think I want to see every applicant apply for re-granting funds. That would be my hope, because I think that's the highest use of this funding. But those are just my comments. Councilor.
yeah, I just want, so, and I'm really open on this. I don't know, Councilor Byers is too. I think, we want to do the best deal for the city, the best deal for constituents. Which might even include waiting. So if you were, let me just ask you what you think the best right now is, to wait to the second round or to go for the path to success or to go for all three? I'm just trying to clarify.
Yeah, I would, I did, really, that's just what I said, is that if I would support the motion if it included, all three components of it. But that's just were I to be a tiebreaker, which I don't see that happening. Counselor Joy.
Great.
But that happened.
You know, I'm a salary cat. Love to make the recommendation to council. So September 1st has been the first round of applications are being accepted. You know, so everyone will know by October what kind of business applications were submitted. I do know that So Ready is interested in some grant programs. I do know MISO is interested in some grant programs. So my hope is that the need that grant tries to capture will already be covered. And if it's not, talent can apply for that in the next round potentially. Would be a recommendation I have. You know, my concern, we could write something really vague and try to get it in. It's nonprofits are eligible for this grant, which is why I think we might get some other applicants around. I'm just also conscious of the deadline for getting these apps in. If I don't know if we could do a very comprehensive design, I would just base it off of Pendleton's program, almost verbatim.
But you are asking to choose of the three, not to.
Well, the motion on the table is actually for the two combined, so, yeah.
But we can amend.
But if amended. Yeah.
Any further discussion?
I'm open to going for all three if somebody wants to amend. I don't know, I want to ask the mover of the motion. You want to change it to all three, or what are you comfortable with now?
I'm open to amending it. I just think that 2 weeks is a short amount of time to get some real clarity on a program like that. And I guess we could resubmit a grant with that one program singled out, or resubmit a grant for all three with further outlining and detailing of the whole process. It just seems like that. I don't know. It seems like we should go for money with a clearly outlined plan now that's available, and then go for more money with a second also clearly outlined plan again. But I am also, if someone is feeling really strongly about amending it, I am open to that.
Councilor
I just
Panama.
want to say, I think, you know, even using the Pendleton plan verbatim would seem like a pretty good plan.
Does it make more sense to really combine the two like projects and then write a separate second grant? Consider the Pathway to Success grant as a separate grant application? Does that make it harder to submit to?
No, I will, no matter what, we'll have to submit to, because the past success grants application flavor is different than the application flavor for infrastructure.
Got it.
Sorry, question, it's possible to submit both before the deadline,
I'm
even though you're gonna be
hopeful.
away.
I will be.
Is this something that our engineers has, you said he's already written these before, or he's doing it now?
I would task the engineer with the infrastructure grant, and
Okay.
I would do my best to complete the past success grant with support of staff as they're able. Thus, that's why I would take it verbatim from Pendleton to reduce the time necessary for me.
I'd move to amend the original motion to include a second grant for Path to Success, if you're able. Time allows.
Second. There's a motion and a second on the table to amend. Is there any discussion on that amendment? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Back to the first motion. Is deliberation completed on the first motion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Wait, I'm sorry. The first motion. Oh, we voted to
amended-
amend and then we voted on. So we just did the same thing twice, right?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
how, yeah. it's-
Sorry. I
it's
just wanted to
awkward
make
and
sure.
weird, I know, but.
Thank you.
Right. Okay, consideration of the request from the urban renewal. This is item number 9.6 now. Consideration of the request of urban renewal committee regarding trees at 300 West Valley Road. Staff report.
Yes, so at their August 9th, 2023 committee meeting, the Talent Urban Forestry Committee approved the following motion, and I will read it verbatim. We move to ask City Council to review the public record and supplemental info from the committee pertaining to the property owner obligations regarding dead and dying trees at 300 West Valley View Road and investigate the city's opportunities for recourse. And then along with this motion attached to this report is a general land use application that the Urban Forestry committed as the supplemental documentation. Just to bring council all in on the context, there are trees that are dying in the parking lot adjacent to the Cummins building. And there's very large Urban Forestry Committee concern as well as community concern about the long-term survivability of those trees with the current way they're being watered. I did look into this when it was first raised to me. I reached out to the property owner to do a check-in on what's going on and also asked Dave just to take a look at our tree code specifically to see if there's any requirements in our code to keep these trees watered. Dave's review is that there was no requirements that the city can enforce on the watering of these trees. These are private property trees. They are not street trees. And when I talked to the property manager had received a lot of calls from the community and was very frustrated that the city was being involved. I will emphasize the majority of those calls were from community representatives or city staff. And so at that time, he was not interested in having city support for helping get those trees watered. That is the time the staff efforts that have gone in. And so this is a request from Urban Forestry Committee to dedicate, I'm assuming, more staff hours to look into the topics mentioned in the motion.
Any questions or comments, Council Clark?
Yeah, who did you contact?
The property manager.
The property manager for Thomas and Maureen Becker Trust?
I contacted the phone number that was given to me by a city staff member that had already been in contact with them. I'm unsure if they were the property manager for both properties, a single property, but they were aware of the trees and fielding calls.
Well, I mean, I think, yeah, it's, there's two parcels there. And it sounds like there's a lack of clarity as to whether the person you talk to is actually responsible for the subject property or responsible for the property on which the Cummins building sits.
Correct. I acted only on the information that I was given.
So, we're not going to have a lot of time for this, so I want to make sure that we jump right in. I did look at the public record. I also looked at code and found 18.105.070. Can we pull that up?
Yep. I'm sorry, Mayor, can you say that code number is again?
18.105.070.
Thank you.
I just want to say, as we go into looking at these, the landscape maintenance section of our code, let's see, is it 0.070? I understand the property manager's frustration but it's a little petulant and really urgent. Both petulant for them to just take a position that we're not going to do any diplomatic solutions or discussion because we've already been approached by people who shouldn't be talking about this with them. And then not be willing to talk about it. I'm super frustrated by that whole idea. This is a much bigger much more important item, preserving these trees than, in my opinion, than to allow, personal, or preferred methods of communication to get in the way. It would have been so much less frustrating to hear. I didn't like the way we were approached, but I get it. We need to look at what solutions are here. It just seemed really unreasonable for them. And I want to say that on the public record. But we do have a section here. I just want to check into it. It shall be the responsibility of the property owner to maintain landscaping on their property. All landscaping trees shall be provided with irrigation. Irrigation is watering. I just want to point that out. It isn't a drip system. It isn't a method of watering. It is watering. Or other facilities for continuing care vegetation. B, commercial areas. In commercial zones, areas not occupied by structures, roadways, and parking areas. I get here because I know that some of the trees are in the parking lot in islands that have been planted, and assuming that they have been, some of the drip system is provided there. Is that right?
I would assume.
Yeah. But anyway, those areas were presented as part of their landscaping plan. So I know we're not going to have a lot of time to break this down, but it seems like I don't understand where, not all of the trees are in the parking lot, but you can't park in the islands where the trees are. So I can't imagine that is really an exception of some kind, but I don't believe it's the intent. When you go back to the beginning of these codes, it makes it really clear what the intent of this section is. And it's to protect the health, safety, and welfare of our community. But this was really, I had asked some of the members if they had seen this part of the code, and nobody had seen too, because I think everybody's been looking at how to preserve trees rather than landscaping and maintenance of landscaping. So in this context, I wonder if there's further discussion to be had here.
I would, defer to our city attorney on the code interpretation. I also don't know what implements we can have for enforcing this section of code. So that would be a question I'll pose to the city attorney as well. I will say, just for context, looking back at the property records of the parcel that is where the trees are dying, that parking lot was established before 1997. I went as far back in the records as 1997, and then I stopped going back further. And so I'm not sure if this code, which was first adopted in 2006, is applicable to the parking lot or not.
If the language is in the previous, by the way, 8 section 3.
Okay.
Yeah, or no, section 4. It's in section 4. It's actually verbatim. That we just moved the language from the old code to the new code. But I will say, they relied on the landscaping plans for the last application that they did. So they cited in their application plans that they are going to utilize what's there and expand on that. So in my mind.
And are you talking about the land use application for the Cummins section property or for the other property?
It's in the public record that was provided to us. So maybe I'm looking at the wrong thing, but in either case, I think the old code does stand in this, and like I said, it's verbatim.
So speaking of that, really, it'd be up to council, if you want to pass a motion to have Dave look more deeply into the topic, we can do that, but I'd be looking for council to set that priority for his time.
Sure.
Madam Mayor, I think there are two issues here. One is enforceability. And another is I guess you'd put it as the development approvals were for landowners their land has changed hands to at least twice since that development was approved. And so there's another question about whether that development approval applies to a subsequent landowner. So I can look at that if you like, but I'm not gonna try to give
No,
an opinion right now.
And
I
I'm
do
not
not want to
asking
do that
you
in
to.
public.
and that, and the planning or the forestry didn't ask us to do that either, you know, so that's not what the motion, that's not what the recommendation is for us. So I'm not asking for that, but I did, you know, I did do, so what is in the record is not, are you saying that what's in the record is not from the current owner? Like,
The development approval was from 2017, and that was, the owner then was Bramley.
But again, we're talking about two different properties, and I think what staff is saying is that that application that we found or that someone on the committee looked up and provided was specifically for the property on which the Rambo building sits, and it covers parking, the part of the parking lot, and there's a funny line that goes out and in and then back over, that's the lower side. So the other property, the Becker property, is on the lower side, and then it comes up along the back, this street along Valley View, and that's where all the trees are dying. And you know, out of time to dig into it, but it's you know, the enforceability of our code. I mean,
well, there is
I
language
guess-
in there about enforceability. We have language in there.
we have to be able to enforce our code. We have to be able to make sure people do what they say they're going to do, because a property changes hands. All of the provisions of the development application are out the window, you know, because a property is partitioned or subdivided. I wanted to also point out.
Well, they might be. I mean, they might be, and that's, I mean, the point that of tonight is to either ask the city attorney to do a deeper dive or not. Because I don't think we can definitively say that that's the case.
Okay, well, I move to direct the city attorney to look into this further and draft an opinion for council.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to ask the city attorney to look into this deeper and draft an opinion for the city council. Any further, did I get that right?
Yeah, and it's almost 10, so we
Yeah.
have to stop at 10.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. The next item on the agenda is commission and committee reports. We'll forego that tonight. Other business and future agenda items, anybody? Written communications and adjournment. Before we adjourn the meeting, I just want to say, I do hope that there is one more opportunity for a diplomatic discussion with these folks. If there's any teeth in any of ours, but to instead of just going to them saying, look, you're in violation, say, to try a diplomatic solution before we go trying any enforcement solutions. And I think we need to just continue to try in good faith. And there is an argument to be made that probably should have been our first tact, not our second tact. I think we're in this boat because folks went rogue. And I think that I'm not going to close this conversation without saying that it didn't represent us well, and we don't get a second bite of the apple because of it. And I'm hoping that what provides us another opportunity is the fact that, at least that's how it's been reported to me. And it provides us this opportunity is that we can get some traction with our code and try to go back to the table with a diplomatic solution. Certainly, I would like to try to do that. All right, if there's nothing else, this meeting's adjourned at
10 p.m.
Thank you all. Appreciate the long haul on that one.